Salutations, Legion of Doom. Welcome to Podcast The Storm, where socially awkward outcasts, crazy weirdos, and all around nerds convene to talk and debate all things pop culture. With me, as always, is my co host, the nerdy occultist, aka the Authenticator, Dalton L. Mortimer.
Hello and good evening, everyone.
And our second co host, the primordial source of evil in comics, Corrupt.
Yo, what's up? Death is upon us. Oh god.
He is very sick, however, he does not yet have my permission to die, so he's not allowed to die on stream.
Alright, and I am your host slash Time Lord wannabe, the brainstormer of pop culture. How's everyone doing tonight? Besides Corrupt, obviously dying.
Yeah, but again, you do not have my permission to die, so don't you dare. Or I will necromant your ass.
I will try.
I mean, to be fair, if he comes back, he will never have to get sick again. So
Well,
I don't know if that's how that works. Can reanimated corpses? I need to do research on this. Can reanimated corpses still get ill?
I mean, if he's technically undead, his body wouldn't age, or I mean, it could rot and decay possibly, but the body itself wouldn't its bodily systems wouldn't be working.
I mean, it depends on how you choose to tether the body and the spirit together.
There are various types of undeath, so I imagine like I could get the unlucky one and just rot and decay.
Imagine
corrupt becomes a Nurglite.
Yeah.
From 40k, basically.
Oh wait, Brainstormer, are you familiar with 40k?
I am. Okay, so my general knowledge of 40k stems from What If the Emperor Had a Text-to-Speech Device?
Oh, okay.
And I've done some subtle research and watched fan animations, which are now kind of a dead thing.
Yeah.
Of Games Workshop. But I have
GW in your censorious ways.
I've seen some lore videos. It's not my favorite IP, I'll be honest. Just Grimdark has never really been a thing I'm into.
Yeah, it's
and I recently got into it by way of Arch. Finally, I'd been putting off getting into Warhammer for a while, and then I was just like, you know what, fuck it, I'm finally gonna get into Warhammer. I have 5 minutes.
I figured Dalton would be a Cinch kind of guy.
Yeah, if you put a gun to my head and made me choose one of the 4 Chaos Gods, I would be a Tzeentch follower. My only problem with him is the constant obsession with change, which I don't like. Like the sorcery and the manipulation and the Machiavellianism, I can get behind that with bells on, but the constant need for entropy and change can go fuck itself.
Alright, I'm curious, Dalton, which one of the 4 Chaos Gods do you see me liking?
This is an interesting question. Not Nurgle, because you don't like things being old and decrepit. Not really Khorne, because you're not really angry or warlike. I could see you getting into Slaanesh just for the sheer cringe factor.
I do like. Go ahead.
But I could also see you get into Tzeentch because of the just Machiavellian troll aspect of it. Probably Slaanesh if I had to pick one for you.
I like Slaanesh. You think Slaanesh is cringe? That's interesting.
Well, the just excess of hedonism, like it extends almost to the point of being a parody of itself, so kind of cringy.
Okay,
Like-
I'm having a
Like
serious game.
the sheer like degeneracy of Slanesh, it ultimately ends up being cringe.
It's cringe.
Like
I find it interesting.
Okay.
Slanesh. Well, Slanesh would be the kind of deity that would patronize a furry convention, for example, and we all know how those go.
Uh,
I'm having a serious case of deja vu. I think we've had this very same conversation before.
I don't think we have. I think this is the first time we've had this conversation.
We have talked about Warhammer 40k.
No, we've talked about Warhammer before, but I don't think we've ever sat around picking Chaos Gods for each other.
No, like, hand to God here. I legitimately think we've had this very same conversation before.
I think you might just be having deja vu because you might have dreamt it ahead of time.
I'm surprised that you see it as cringy though. That's what I find interesting. Like I've never really thought of it as cringy. It's just excessive hedonism.
Cringe not so much as degenerate, and the degeneracy is sort of cringe.
You find degeneracy cringe in general, I guess.
Well, no, it by her very nature, Slanesh will make any pursuit degenerate and cringe. Like if you're a painter, for example, within like a month she'll have you painting with your own entrails, which is so degenerate. Like this is we're talking about the kind of entity that like loves the movie Vathid in Noches, if you know what that is. The pig fucking movie.
The thing about you have talked about 40. Oh, look at this. Fucking Chrono is siding with Brainstorm, where he said.
No, I know we've talked about 40k before, but I don't think we talked about picking like which chaos gods we like. That's the part that I'm, because I know we've talked about 40k before. I just know
okay.
I'm just fairly certain we haven't had the which chaos god is likely to represent us conversation before.
Hello, Dragon Turtle. And with that, I'm sorry. Like it's just like we got.
Yeah, we have to actually get into the news cycle because that's what this.
All right, let's go.
And because we love to torture ourselves, we're going into shit. Okay, so this is from fandomwire.com. Don, I believe you sent this to me, right?
I did. I was gonna go with the Bounding into Comics one, but there are two problems I see with the Bounding into Comics one. Number one, generally because they are an anti-woke site, there's not much commentary that we can offer to with relation to Bounding into Comics article very often. And two, because they're a more conservative-leaning anti-woke site, sometimes they get shit wrong or they over-exaggerate shit, and so it becomes less about addressing the stupid thing they're writing the article about and more about correcting the shit they get wrong. Plus, I like going with primary sources, and this is the oldest of the articles that covered this I could find that actually addressed the thing.
I will say, like, in general, I think Bounding is pretty good, but like I do agree with you on those two. Like they're basically giving our kind of commentary, so there's no point in basically reading an article that kind of agrees with you already.
Yeah.
And two, they do kind of have like their own biases. I think they're generally pretty good.
They're sensationalist is the problem that I would like. Yeah. I don't disagree with them, and I don't even mind that they're more conservative leaning. I just think the fact they're more conservative leaning sometimes prevents them from parsing the difference, for example, between a gay character existing in a thing at all and it being woke.
I think sometimes they do sensationalize a bit. I agree with that.
All right. Anyway.
Yeah.
Right. And before I forget, this is written by. If I say this, I'm terrible with names. I'm going to be fully honest. I
think.
Irene Cruz.
What is his name?
Ariane Cruz. Sorry.
Oh, it's a woman. Okay.
Published, I guess, November 17th. It says 10 days ago. So.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I want somebody who's hard on the material. Our producer, Nate Moore, reveals MCU writers as fans hold it responsible for forgettable Phase 4. Okay.
That title kind of varies. I think this is yet another case of the author of the article trying to run cover for the stupid thing the person they're interviewing is saying.
Yeah. This is kind of the issue with, like, this is why these types of articles are better anyway. Because, like, you have people who bend over backwards to defend, like, the stupid shit that's being said.
Yeah,
Those
because we don't want people to take them out of context, and so let's take them out of context to make them more charitable than they should be.
Okay. Growing up as a super fan of Marvel Comics, I guess this is also like an opinion piece, kind of.
I mean, ish. Like I said, this is the oldest and most thorough version of this topic that I could find because
Okay.
I prefer to seek out primary sources whenever I can, and usually that results in Brainstormer's computer not being able to run the thing. For Brainstormer's computer is a potato from 2009, but that's neither here nor there.
Growing up as a super fan of Marvel Comics, one might have dreamed of working for the giant studio and bringing to life all their characters and stories. Many people behind the successful MCU movies are avid fans of the comics, but for Marvel producer Nate Moore, this is a huge red flag. Okay, you know what? I'm gonna hold on my but yeah, please, Dom.
You're gonna have to take that up with Kevin Feige then, because one of his biggest strengths in creating the MCU was the fact that he was a massive super fan who was epically devoted to making the Marvel Cinematic Universe a thing. Like he had been trying to make the MCU a thing since I believe Blade, and I know for a fact he was doing it during the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies and the X-Men movies. So like Kevin Feige being a super fan is exactly what enabled him to alter the source material for cinematic consumption. Because that's the ultimate thing about fans is yes, while they have a devotion to the source material, they also know there have been cases where the source material has pissed them off. And if you don't believe me, ask any Spider-Man fan in history about One More Day and prepare for a 1 hour lecture. Or ask an Avengers fan about Avengers number 200, where Miss Marvel was mind control raped into giving birth to a supervillain from another dimension.
That's hilarious. Oh my god, I remember that.
I heard, but I'll be honest, I'm more of a DC guy. So.
Well, okay, the same is true. The same is true for DC. You want to get an earful from a DC fan? Ask them about Asbar one of these days, or fucking the sequel to The Dark Knight Returns that was The Dark Knight Strikes Again, or Holy Terror. Like,
Holy Terror.
It's not as though comic book fans don't have standards and therefore are capable of picking out a plot thread that makes no fucking sense or is in some way traitorous to the characters. Like for example, my biggest gripe with regards to DC for the last 30 freaking years, i.e. longer than I've been alive, has been they forgot that Kent Nelson as Dr. Fate was important to being Dr. Fate, and they just made Naboo basically require a human host and basically use people as meat puppets. And ever since then, it has crippled any Dr. Fate story. The stupid possession retcon.
So, like, what, like so I said this before, and I think one of the biggest, I think one of the reasons why they don't want like an actual fan of the source material is because like they have they already had they have a vision for how they want these characters to be treated, and they're afraid that people who actually are fans of the source material will
If
want
we
to
let people
recreate
who like
those.
this thing in here, they'll treat it as though it matters for its own reasons, whereas we want to use
Exactly.
everything as a means to an end. So,
Right.
Exactly. That's exactly it. Yeah,
I
exactly.
mean, again, if we weren't in such a climate that we are now socially, I could say I understand the idea. Granted, again, my thing is like kind of a middle ground of it. Like, find someone who understands material or is willing to research it, but isn't afraid to add their own 2 cents to it. You know?
and that's usually what people are asking for. For example, I was massively impressed by what Sam Raimi did for Doctor Strange 2, and I thought it was much, much better than what Scott Derrickson did with the first one. But and the same is true of another really great example. Remember what Guillermo del Toro did for Hellboy? He changed a lot of shit tone wise, but he did so well that most people, even people who are fans of the comics, will automatically associate Hellboy with Guillermo del Toro, to the point that when I believe it was Christopher Marshall made the 2017 one, everyone was like, this is horrible. What have you done to my boy?" But that's what I'm saying. The ultimate win state is to take someone who knows the source material and who has something unique they can add to it, and let them be in charge of it. Like, for again, Guillermo del Toro with Hellboy, the Wachowski siblings with V for Vendetta, um, Tim Burton with Batman, and the Russo brothers with Captain America, and so on and so on. But the thing of it is, it's not that those people don't have a respect for the source material. It's that they have always wanted to tell a specific story within their style in that source material, and then they're finally given the opportunity to, vis-a-vis Sam Raimi with either Doctor Strange or, now that I think about it, to some degree, Spider-Man. Although I'm not gonna hold the limitations of the Spider-Man trilogy against him, because it was a different time. It was the early 2000s, and the genre was still in its like gestation phase.
Yeah.
But I will say, for me at least, the Sam Raimi movies don't hold up as well, as a lot of people seem to think they do.
I think it's because when you compare them to what we have now, it's hard to
It's hard
kind
to
of
not see how things have improved, which is a good
exactly,
thing
yeah.
ultimately.
I mean, I still enjoy it, but you know.
Anyway, moving forward.
All right. Actually, Chrononaut, to be honest, these writers' rooms need to be fired. These are excuses. They have screwed the pooch on Thor, Operation Galactic Storm, Inferno, X-Men. I just shake my head.
It Chrono, this is the producer for the movies. It's not the comics that we're talking about.
No, I think he said. I wonder if he's Chrono. I wonder
He,
if Chrono
he's
is talking.
he's
Hold
citing
on.
comic storylines. I think he's confused as to which
Well,
writers we're talking about.
No.
I assume Thor: Love and Thunder.
Yeah, that's what I think he means. Like, I think he's talking about the the writers in general. The fandom curse, simple why I put the Morgan Freeman way. The character redo is so bad you can't get past it. Watch Shawshank. Okay. Like, I think he's talking about the writers for the movies.
Okay, that fair. Chrono is sometimes having two sides of a conversation where only I'm privy to one. So
Oh my
that's.
god, that's so mean.
I love Chrono, but he forgets that sometimes, like, we don't have access to his thoughts. So
We
so
don't
he
have access to his thoughts.
so it's like,
Why does he
He
sound?
he will have half a conversation in his head and the other half he'll have out loud. So it'll be
Why
like
does he? Why did you make him sound like an old man with dementia or something like with?
because he has bipolar and he'll admit that sometimes his brain gets jumbled.
I mean, I can see. I understand that, but like, holy shit.
Like, okay, if you want to know where I'm getting this from, Corrupt, ask him about his fan fiction sometimes, and then sit there for an hour as he repeats the same point over and over in 1,000 different ways to try and get you to determine which you like better.
All right. Anyway, guys.
Anyway, yeah, moving on.
Avid comic fans would always appreciate anything that is faithful to the source material. The general audience would not bother so much as long as it's entertaining.
Um,
Hold on.
okay.
But sometimes writers have to deviate and generate new ideas to make the stories more compelling, relevant, and fresh.
Okay, fuck your relevance and fuck your freshness. Those are
Yeah,
ideological phantasms.
I,
But
I, I don't I don't really like that either. That kind of annoys me too. It goes back to the whole elevate the material shit. Like,
yeah, the source material wasn't good in itself. We have to make it good thing. But more to the goddamn point. People don't always like things that are loyal to the source material if they had existing problems with the source material. For example, most people can agree that Captain America Civil War was better than the actual Civil War storyline because a lot of people view Civil War as kind of the ground zero for when Marvel started to lose their touch in the comics
yeah,
because basically everything around Civil War and everything that followed Civil War was basically the worst era in Marvel Comics history. For example, the fallout of Civil War is what gave us One More Day. The fallout of Civil War is what gave us World War Hulk. The fallout of Civil War is what gave us uh, Doctor Voodoo or Brother Voodoo as Sorcerer Supreme instead of Doctor Strange because Doctor Strange had to delve into dark magic during the events of Planet Hulk or World War Hulk. Like most people looking back look at Civil War as a really good storyline that had a lot of issues that ultimately ended up nerfing the rest of Marvel's publication history during that time period.
pretty
So
much.
people who know comic book fans know that while they love Civil War as a concept, they also had a lot of problems with it. And because Joe and Anthony Russo and Kevin Feige were all comic book fans and knew kind of where on which side their butter was their bread was buttered as it were, they knew we everybody loves Civil War, but if in order to make it work, in order to make the people who have issues with Civil War happy, we're going to have to tweak it, and so they tweaked it. But that's the kind of thing you would only know if you were a comic book fan, and that's why I have massive issues with the way you're characterizing this. You
So,
act as though being a comic book fan or indeed a fan of anything means being like
blind.
cartoonishly like devoted to a thing in defiance of all standards or it's this straw man that I often hear from people when fans do criticize something. The Johnny Come Lately fans will be like, well, if you were really a fan of things, then you wouldn't have any problems with them whatsoever. And it's like, no, that's not how it works. And I always liken it to the difference between being supportive of something and being enabling of something. Because as an example, if someone you love, if a friend or family member was addicted to drugs, are you a better friend if you A enable their drug habit and don't have any issues with it whatsoever, or B set up an intervention for them and tell them to knock it the fuck off for their own good?
Uh,
Right.
all right, I'd like to point something out if I may.
Mhm.
Um, One thing I dislike about the new fresh audience shit is that it kind of assumes that the source material itself is like basically this outdated fossil and it can't survive outside of its medium because its medium is so like old and alien to like current
Yeah.
audiences that it would just be repellent. And that's not really true. Like look at like you because they took like they took the comics and they presented them to modern audiences and they were hits. Like just because like it almost seems as if they have not only a disdain for the source material but also think that it's I guess for old men and old and like stuff for old men would never translate to new
It,
modern diverse audiences. I hate that shit.
here's the other half of that, because I agree, but I'm going to add to it, which is it assumes that the reason why the original audience showed up was not anything to do with the quality of the original material. It
Yeah.
it it assumes that like there is no such thing as universal merit, or at least like common trends. And that's the most frustrating thing, because the thing of it is most of the most of the old men, quote unquote, that are currently comic book fans became comic book fans when they were children.
Yeah.
That doesn't necessarily mean that comics are my kid stuff, which I hate that fucking straw man too, but it does mean that whatever appeal that comics had, it was it wasn't like comics were going for any specific audience. Back in the day, back in the gold and silver ages, they were basically going for whoever the fuck wanted to read comics, and they were willing to encourage anyone they want, like anyone who had even a passing interest in comics, to give comics a try, because the idea was it's not the people, it's not the people sensibilities that we have to cater to. We just have to create something good enough, and if we create something good enough, the quality that's inherent in the material will convert or convince people to join it. And that's
I
exactly
mean,
why, even after, the gold and silver age fans either got too old or died, their children and their children's children and people who never even had heard of comics before became fans during the copper age or the silver age or whatever. Like, if this whole Manu audience thing was true, then comics would have died after about 1980. But
pretty
they
much.
didn't, because the writers wrote good stories, and good stories are universally compelling to a certain segment of people. Therefore, new audiences signed up of their own free will. The difference now is they're so obsessed with this phantasm of my new audience, they don't pay attention at all to quality. And quality is the one thing that is universally applicable. If you make a story good enough, a certain percentage of people who find those kind of stories compelling will show up of their own free will. Especially now, because let's face it, if the comic book industry was healthy, we would be right back to like golden age comics levels of readership.
Pretty much.
If the comic book industry was healthy, it would be larger than it ever has been, because the movies are basically the biggest PR maneuver you could even conceivably ask for. The reason it's not manifesting that way is because while the movies, by and large, are still compelling to a large percentage of people, those people who would be convinced by those movies to check out the source material go to check out the source material, and they find that the thing that's on offer bears no resemblance to what they find compelling in the movies, not because it was never there, because it was, but because the writers have decided to get in their own way and also moralize like son of bitches, and tried to quote unquote fix comics, when what they ended up fixing, quote unquote, was exactly the thing that they should have left the fuck alone. And
What I
meanwhile, they didn't leave the fuck alone things they should have left the fuck alone.
Also, this is a side note too. Riri Williams is such a nothing character. Her comic didn't spike up in price either. So there you go.
Well,
Like,
yeah, because
Uh,
in the comics, her motivation was literally was I need you to tell me something I can't do so I can convince myself you are oppressing me and therefore I can rise up against you and rebel.
Pretty
That
much,
was literally her motivation to her teacher in the comic.
she's such a zero impact. She's such a zero of a character. Like her comic didn't spike up.
Right.
But like even America Chavez got like a minor bump, but
Yeah.
Riri Williams got nothing.
Right.
She's
Yeah.
sucked.
So
What's up?
some things were being said in the comments, and I do want to get back to the article.
All right.
All right.
Ooh.
Okay. Chrononauts simply put, writers suck and destroy the leads to
Oh my god.
stories that came later. The changes can be done if it is in the hands of someone like Morgan Freeman playing Red in Shawshank Redemption. Then yes, the change works. The second part is incompetent casting. Sum it up. Conclusion: 1, bad writing, bad casting. 3, destruction of source material.
I wouldn't even necessarily blame the casting on this point. I think it's mostly down to writing and or ideology because
I mean, there are certain cases I could argue.
I mean sure, but that's true of literally everything. Sometimes there's just a bad casting. My point is that I think the actors that they get are capable of delivering good material if they're given good material. They're just not given good material, and therefore they wind up paying the price of not being able to. Like for example, I don't blame what's his name Tom Sturridge for fucking up the Sandman. I think if he were actually given a chance to play Dream properly, he could play Dream. But between Netflixing and Neil Gaiman deciding he needs to kill his golden goose because he doesn't like it anymore, Sandman, the Netflix adaptation, ended up being shit. And no amount of good acting is going to be able to unfuck what is now currently fucked.
What?
Even though it's getting to season 2, and I despair.
You know what? So my introduction to the Sandman Netflix show at first was like, oh, they actually did try to preserve it. Because the first thing you see is like this magical dreamscape.
Right.
Oh.
The first scene was good. Like if everything had been on par with that first scene, I would have been totally fine. But like
exactly,
everything after that first scene was just complete and utter downhill.
And then you see the rest of it, and it's like, oh, this is just like CW style Drek. I refuse to watch the rest of this shit.
Yeah, I of course suffered through the entire goddamn thing,
right,
and it hurt me. It hurt something deep and fundamental to my being.
Okay. So I'm just gonna. What they did to the Lemurians, and we'll get to that chrono later. I don't want to talk about that now. They won't give us Riri Williams getting fucked up by Thanos. That happened in the comics?
I don't know enough about. Like, I know after Brian Michael Bendis stopped writing her, she did get better as a character. Because Brian Michael Bendis just appears to be the comic book Antichrist.
Okay.
Everything he touches ruins everything. But
okay,
I didn't follow anything really closely with Riri.
Wait, has Brainstormer ever seen any of Brian Michael Bendis' dialogue? It's so awful.
there was. I think I had the Powers comic that he wrote. It didn't seem bad in that one.
The dialogue. Okay, so this is an example of the dialogue, right? I'm on a roof. A roof, a thing that covers a building. Yes, a roof, a stable shelter that.
Please stop.
Okay.
Oh God, make it stop.
I get you. I think he's kind of before my time, to be honest. And I've mostly been getting into indie stuff in the last couple of years. So
it's just it's just basically you take a word, you take like a roof, and then you describe what a roof is like 5 or 6 times.
As though it's the most foreign concept in existence. Meanwhile, the like really over the top sci-fi bullshit doesn't get any elaboration whatsoever, and we're all just like,
Okay, guys.
hey, yeah, moving on.
Okay.
Chrononaut also brings up Brie Larson has no Capaldi. Same crap writing. Capaldi carried Doctor Who. Fair point.
Well, okay, but this is the other problem with Brie Larson specifically. Normally, when they're writing these characters in the MCU, and I've seen this in many behind the scenes things, they let the actor inform the character
Yeah.
to make the character and the actor flow better. And under normal circumstances, that's perfect. That's why we get the awesomeness that is RDJ playing Iron Man as perfectly as he does. That's why we get Chris Evans playing Captain America as well as he does. But when they did that with Brie Larson, rather than doing what I think Kevin Feige originally wanted to do, which was a 80s style Miss Marvel type character,
We got an angry feminist.
They got an angry third wave bitter feminist, and so rather than fixing Captain Marvel like they did to some degree successfully with America Chavez in Multiverse of Madness, or what I will give them credit for at least trying to do with Riri Williams in Wakanda Forever, they ended up having to double down on it because the actor they got to play her was also every bit as angry and wooden as the SJW comic book counterpart.
Right. Anything to add, Chrono? You good?
Quite honestly, like I do agree with Dalton I do agree with Dalton that like I think I'm of two minds on it. On one hand, I do agree that like allowing an actor to put themselves into the character can make for like a really great concept. On the other hand, there's like you have your Brie Larson, so I think it's more or less down to the individual person.
Yeah.
In general, so yeah, I'd say I agree. I agree with Dalton. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, that's all I was saying.
Yeah,
under
I
any other
agree.
circumstances, it would have worked because in any other circumstance, they would have gotten someone who actually was good at playing the character. Like I still maintain the correct answer for who should have played Captain Marvel is probably Rebecca Romijn, because if you've ever seen the Librarians TV show and remember how she played Colonel Eve Baird, if she had played Captain Marvel in that same way, it would have been a much better character.
Okay. Now, I'm going to read the comments here, and then we're going to move on. Henry Cavill basically saved The Witcher TV show. Who's to say some of these woke or normie actors / actresses didn't do the opposite way because they didn't like it.
That again, case in point, Brie Larson. She literally said she hated playing Captain Marvel because she thought she was above the material.
Right.
Yeah.
And it comes through every instance in her character.
Right.
Also, with regards to the whole Witcher controversy, I feel bad for Liam Hemsworth because Liam Hemsworth is the ultimate also-ran actor. Like every time they don't know who to put in a like actor role, they always go with Liam Hemsworth because he's connected enough to be associated with the more likable Hemsworth brother.
Yeah.
But not likable enough in his own right to have established himself already. So they basically keep giving him opportunities to prove himself, and because he's the least charismatic of his brothers, he keeps fumbling it.
And like Henry Cavill,
I don't even think it's his fault at this point. It's just because Chris Hemsworth is a good actor doesn't mean that everyone connected to it. It's like with the Kennedys and politicians. Just because JFK was a good politician doesn't mean every cycle needs to have at least one Kennedy in it.
Exactly.
Please stop.
And Henry Cavill was really good in that role. So
Yeah, dude,
that's kind of tough to follow.
Right. Also, like the dude is a super nerd, which I respect a lot.
Yeah, he actually really likes and cares about the material he's working with, and that's why a lot of people really like him.
Which is why I'm like happy that he's getting to like play Superman again.
And what's more, I'm happy that now that Snyder and Nolan are fucking gone, he gets to play Superman as the consummate Boy Scout that, the big blue Boy Scout that Superman is supposed to be, instead of the grimdark, should I have let them all die? Yeah, maybe. It's a
So
fucking
here,
hell.
so to answer Dalton's question as to why I like Superman, because like even though he contrasts greatly with my taste, like everything with the characters I like, it's just so grim, dark, and just that, and I guess villainous. It's nice to have a It's nice to have a character who's just an innocent, sort of naive ray of positivity.
Mm, mm,
Again, the mom baseball apple pie, aw shucks, good old boy, sort of all American dude.
I
And
wouldn't
like
agree.
it's
I
nice.
wouldn't agree with the naive part, but I
No,
get.
he's naive, but
No,
I don't think he's naive, but I don't think that's a bad thing.
no, he's not naive. He's just
He is.
that's
It's not a bad thing though.
No, Brainstormer saying the naive part is what he agrees with. He
Yeah,
doesn't agree with the ray of positivity, is what he's saying.
no, that's not what I'm saying.
What are you saying?
Okay, well, naive is often equated to like not understanding things.
Oh, okay. Like
Like
basically, when
innocent.
I say naive, I don't mean it in a negative way. When I say naive, I mean someone who's like, I will take you at your word instead of assuming that there's like some hidden agenda behind what you say.
Okay,
Basically.
that's okay. I get that.
That's why I normally use the word innocent, because I think it better conveys what I mean when I normally because I agree he is naive, but in this case I'm not using it as a derogatory term. In Superman's case, his naivety is a good thing, because it essentially allows him to face a very over the top universe and not be altered by it at all. And that ultimately is one of Superman's greatest strengths, is that he can face the world and not be corrupted by it. Not because of any sort of long-winded philosophical ramblings like with Batman, but because it just doesn't it just never phases him. Like he,
Exactly.
Right, okay,
Dragon, yeah, like Dragon Turtle said, he hasn't been jaded by the world, and like so much of the characters that I like are just jaded and like
okay.
not very nice to
But
be
I'm not
to be
gonna lie.
brought.
It's every time when I say someone says like he's a boring, like Superman's a boring character, or just like they always say naive in such a negative way that I basically associate naive.
you have a hair trigger about the word naive.
Okay, all right. Well,
Which is
it's
fair.
not. When I say naive, I mean it in he's innocent and not jaded by the world, which is something I appreciate about. It's like why I like Goku. That's one reason why I like
Simple,
Goku.
simple in a positive way, I guess
I actually,
is effectively what
I
naive
actually should
means.
try to send this to you, Crow, because I think you get a kick out of it because
Okay.
because of your taste. Someone actually, there's like a compilation of like TikToks of a story of Goku in the boys universe.
Oh my god! Holy shit!
I haven't like watched all of it because there's like two whole videos and like it's about 50 TikToks altogether. So, but what I've seen of it, it's just a fun idea to think about.
Goku
Anyway,
isn't really so Dragon Turtle. Goku isn't really stupid. Goku doesn't have like a formal education, so he lacks like a lot of like book smarts, but he has like a lot of I guess knowledge about the world
again,
based on like
naive
reading.
and naive and simple in the best possible way is how one would
Yeah,
describe
there
Goku.
are YouTube videos like compilations of it. Just type like Goku in the like. What if Goku was in the boys? I guess
Like
like
To be fair, though, you put literally any superhero from any other universe in the boys' universe, and the boys are going to be massively philosophically undermined, and B, just beaten the fuck out of.
pretty much because like the thing about the boys is that like the universe hinges on the superheroes being like corrupt and evil.
super celebrities.
Yeah, and corrupt and evil. But when you take like someone who is like the opposite of that, it just kind of undermines the entire premise of the
Right, and
of
also,
the
Well, not just that, but in terms of power scaling, because while the boys are dominant, or the seven are dominant in their universe, they're a moderately sized fish in a very small pond, sort of thing.
Okay, I am curious about that because I've thought about this for a long time. How powerful are the seven? Like in terms of like superpower scaling.
Not very. Like
Really?
I know for example they did a Omni-Man versus Homelander death battle.
Oh yeah, he'd get fucking. I mean, like Homelander would get obliterated. Yeah, that I know.
And the same thing is true of Superman, or
Goku.
like even outside of like a Superman category, like Vision would fuck him up. Even somebody like even somebody like Constantine would pretty much fuck up Homelander.
So they're not even Avengers level strong.
They're they're no, they're not really. The thing of it is, all of the superheroes within the boys get their powers from Compound V, at least as far as we know.
Yeah.
And Compound V is slightly more powerful than like a Captain America style super soldier serum, but they're still only augmented humans.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, just roughly, like you place like any DC hero that has superpowers, they're already outmatched. Just and also the thing is like, and this is also I've brought up is experience compared to like other
Oh,
superheroes.
that's true because they don't fight supervillains and
No,
shit or other
No,
supers.
they just pose for the cameras. They have no battle, like they have no training, no real.
Yeah.
Well,
Soldier Boy is the exception because he was actually deployed occasionally, but
maybe Mav or Maeve, Queen Maeve.
Oh yeah, oh right, because they don't have any superhero training because they only do like stop like maybe like robbers and
Or terrorist.
or terrorists, yeah. And that's like yeah, okay, so they have no real
yeah.
superhero training.
But even in terms of just raw power scaling, for example, like Homelander is not as strong as Spider-Man. The only advantage he has on Spider-Man would be the like laser eyes and the flight. But in terms of raw power, basically anyone in any other comic book universe could just completely wreck them.
Oh shit, I didn't even know that.
Yeah. Although I will say this, I'm not the big fan of just the boys in general, just based on my own taste.
The nihilism.
Yeah, so
Yeah, it is very nihilistic, yeah.
but I respect the
Show is better than the comic though, with regards to that.
that's what I was getting at. I respect the show more just because like it's better constructed, I guess. If that makes sense, like
Yeah.
Anyway, we went so far off topic.
Yeah, back to the article.
Yeah, let me scratch a portion of this. Okay. Marvel producer Nate Moore opts against MCU writers who are comic fans. Okay.
Okay.
Nate Moore, producer of Marvel films from Captain America, The Winter Soldier, to Black Panther, Wakanda Forever, said that being a huge comics nerd is not going to get you the job. In the
That's so
podcast,
insulting.
Yeah, in a sane world it would, but never the fuck mind. We don't live in a sane world.
We'll get into because there actually is a quote being brought up here. So, in the podcast, the town with Matthew Belloni, Belloni, I guess. Moore tells fans all the behind the scenes of Marvel's hiring process, and that includes being strict on employing die-hard fans. For me, one thing I think is interesting about Marvel's process, and specifically for writers, I would say a lot of times we've pitched writers who love Marvel, and we're pitched writers who love Marvel, and to me that's always a red flag because I go, oh, I don't want you to already have a pre-existing idea of what it is because you grew up with issue 15, and that's what you want to recreate. I want somebody who's hard on the material, who goes, "What is this? I think there's a movie here, but maybe we should be looking at it in this way." I mean, that can go.
Again, the false dichotomy is giving me a brain aneurysm here. You're acting as though comic book fans aren't hard enough on comic books, which
It's
half
almost go ahead.
half the time this is why it baffles my brain, because half the time when comic book fans are critical of adaptations, they whine. They whine that comic book fans are too critical of the source material, or too critical of the movie, and it's like
Eh,
now we're getting into this thing where like he's insinuating that comic book fans just like mindlessly consume whatever they're given. And
it,
again, ask any Spider-Man fan about One More Day, or ask any Batman fan about Asbar. Prepare for a lecture.
it comes off almost as if he feels that like when he said, "What is this? Can we make a story out of this?" It's almost as if he's baffled by the idea that people would enjoy the material. Like
Yeah,
this is like this. It's kind of like the people who used to turn their nose up at the idea of comics being treated as like a medium
literature.
that's not for like children.
Yeah,
And
that's
like,
my kid stuff.
how
Yeah.
yeah, how can you see a story out of this? This is nonsense and garbage. And just the attitude is what I find just weirdly off-putting for like the what is supposed to be the MCU.
Yeah, and again, that's the part that really gets my goat here. It it would be one thing if this were fucking Gavin McGinnis saying this, because he said shit like this before about like video games and stuff.
Yeah,
And that's just TradCon's gonna TradCon. That's whatever. But when
maybe
people who are allegedly in like the people who are allegedly in charge of producing shit are having this attitude. It's like a couple of weeks ago with the Alan Moore thing. I'm like, if this were someone who was like anti-comics, I could understand it. But the fact that it comes from the voice of Alan Moore just it just adds whole new layers of what the fuck is wrong with your head
I'm
to it.
gonna be honest with you. I'm gonna be honest with you. Like I've always held this. I've always contended that like Hollywood still treats comics as like basically being beneath them, and I still
A non-entity, basically,
exactly yeah.
artistically speaking.
I still feel that way. I still feel that they think comics are beneath them.
I think it's less common now than it has been before, just because of the success of the genre. But
Yeah.
yeah, there are still people like fucking Martin Scorsese and uh fucking James Cameron, and so like we did an article a couple of years ago that was like the top 10 famous directors who have no truck with comic books or something like that, and it was just like a who's who of your heyday. It was people who were big in the 70s and 80s and are essentially now just bitter old men dumping on the new thing because they don't understand it.
Let me see. Dragon Turtle said it's because they used to hate geeks, but then geek culture and the internet became popular. So
Geeks
instead of
won,
being left
and
out,
they're still confused. Yeah.
yeah, left out or becoming geeks, they became new geeks and reshaped geek culture to fit. Like maybe he's right. Maybe it is because like they're the type of people who look down on this medium and they still don't think like I said, they think it needs to be uplifted or changed
Yeah.
in order to be proper movie material.
I think that's definitely part of the story, part of the old, norms are my god, or like uber tradconism. I definitely think that definitely is a thing. But I also want to point out, as I usually do in these cases, the new quote unquote intellectual approach to art in the last like 40 or 50 years.
Oh, basically the means justified. Oh, okay, I know what you're. I
Yeah,
know what
everything has to be um a means to an end rather than an end in itself. And
exactly.
the thing with comics and genre fiction or nerd fiction in particular is almost everything in geek fiction is not about my themes, my meta narrative, my wider point, my socio-political gobbledygook. It's always about these characters are interesting entities in their own right. This world is interesting in its own right, and you don't need my Jungian archetypes or my critical theory or my socio-political significance to make these characters interesting or compelling. They exist for their own sake and are compelling enough on their own terms that you don't need the externalizing of the meaning. And
There's this.
and in modern day like art school or modern day like philosophy of art logic, like the stuff that we got from the Frankfurt School or from like Dada and stuff, is art isn't valuable for its own sake. It's only ever valuable as a means to some end, whether it's
Yeah,
Jungian archetypes or whether it's socio-political gobbledygook or whatever.
it's always been like it's always annoyed me that like art can never like a story or a piece of art can never be its own. It has to convey some sort of message or propagandize some sort of
My
political point.
theme. Uh,
I hate this I hate the fact that they want art to proselytize their like political opinions. I can't stand that shit.
art has to be useful. It can't just be valuable
I
for
can't
its
just be
own
like
sake
this
on
is
its own terms. Like
I can't just be like this is neat. I enjoyed this. No, it has no. You're stupid for wanting to enjoy something. It has to tell somebody you hate something, or it
yeah,
has to tell somebody you like something.
and to be fair, there's a section of the non woke side that does this too. That they've taken to doing the like Jordan Peterson or Carl Jung approach of like everything has to serve archetypes. It's it's never just I like this character as an individual character with their own individual backstory and own individual powers. They have to fit into some wider archetype, i.e., you can't like Doctor Strange because he's Doctor Strange. You have to like him because he's part of the wizard archetype. Or you can't like Superman because he's Superman. He has to be a stand-in for Hercules because mythopoetic fucking Jungian bullshit. Or you can't like Batman because he's Batman for his own individual sake. You have to like him because he's a stand-in for like the swashbuckler or the rogue
Oh,
archetype.
you're
And it's
talking about these people. Oh, you're talking about those people who are like, oh, this is classic fiction. Who are obsessed
yeah,
with like this is classic fiction. It has to like emulate classic fiction, or it's worthless.
yeah.
That type
The
of shit. I'm less annoyed. I'm less annoyed by that, if only because there's less of it, and more because it comes off less malicious and more like just old people who can't let go of the past.
I mean that's fair, but the thing that annoys me and the thing that tips me into disliking it in equal measure to the critical theorists and the woke brigade is often the again this is again kind of the traditionalist answer to the critical theory. Like instead of offering what we just came up with, the idea that some things exist for their own sake and by their own internal rules, and that they aren't some means to an end. Instead of that, what you'll get is you shouldn't be pushing wokeness in X, Y, and Z thing. You should be pushing my Jungian archetypes because the purpose of these stories is to tell morality and to tell like traditionalism, and that it's basically just take wokeness as an ideology, take out everything quote unquote subversive, and put in traditionalism instead, and then it's literally the same argument.
I suppose it comes. I suppose with me, it's always been this way. Like I see it this way. Like I said, they're significant. They have significantly less prominence and influence, so it's not that much of an issue. But also, it's because I kind of come to this opinion, right? You're going to
Mhm.
have people who have those opinions, and like you're always going to have people who have like some woke opinions and people who have like some idiot
Tradcon
tradcon.
opinions, yeah.
Yeah, like they're just going to exist. So I feel like, and I do feel like people have like the right to at least express a stupid opinion on the internet, like on Twitter. Like
Yeah,
if you
no,
express,
I agree.
I feel like people have the right to express a stupid opinion on Twitter. It's just that the problem when it comes to like the woke shit, like that has its tendrils and entertainment and
Yeah,
academia
they've
and
won back in the '90s, and now they're
exactly
controlling
and like
everything.
government and business and like it's kind of hard to ignore somebody who goes like you should feel guilt, you should hate yourself because you have a penis.
Yeah.
You know?
My problem is I see a lot of anti-wokesters going the tradcon or Jungian archetypes route, and I worry that it's a false dichotomy, i.e., they're both operating essentially in the same framework. They're just on opposite corners of it, and the framework itself is faulty. So I'd rather get rid of it entirely. And two, I worry about a a future not too distant from here where the wokeness will have shit the bed so badly that the other side will win, and then we'll be back. Then we'll be back in like the '90s era with the tradcons basically retaking the throne. And I'm in the position of like I'd rather prevent that from happening now when the tradcons are not in power than wait 20 years where the only two intelligent things anyone can say about art is either my critical theory or
Guys,
my Jungian archetypes. I'd rather just get back to the like actual historical position of art is valuable for its own sake. Characters are not extensions of some lofty archetype. They are individual characters with
guys,
individual backstories and individual lives.
Okay, okay. I know, brainstormer, but can I at least say this in
yeah, sure.
response? Okay, I guess the thing is like the anti woke shit is a lot bigger than like we give it credit for because I don't really see this, and I think it's because we watch different people. Like I don't watch Micah Curtis, right? And I know Micah Curtis is one of the is like I think Micah Curtis is still like an anti woke person, but I'm not sure.
Yeah,
But
the worst
he's
one with regards to this whole Jungian approach is Professor Geek, if you know who that
I
is.
don't. I see. I like Professor Geek. I think I've heard of him. And Micah Curtis, I don't watch, and I think Micah Curtis, like champions that sort of shit. Whereas I watch, whereas I don't watch them. I watch like other people. For example, like I like Critical Drinker, Jay Longbone, people like that. And whereas they're mostly just like we can have both of these ideas. Like where Critical Drinker, for example, right? He's like we can have like both of these ideas. We don't need to like suffocate each other. We can have like everybody can present their art
Yeah, that's fair.
and
That's fair enough.
exactly. That's basically where I come from. And I think it's more or less just there's so much of it, like we just don't see the same things. Except for the fourth age. I still am not subscribed to him, but I still give him
Yeah. He does the whole Jungian thing too. And again, my worry is my worry is less about that in and of itself, and more about in the absence of wokeness in about 20 years, because I think wokeness will eventually lose the argument. Will the tradcon perspective of my Jungian archetypes fill the void of social justice or wokeness? And if that happens, I don't think it'll be any better. It might not be as bad, but I don't think it will be an actual solution to the problem. I think it's just the same framework just flipped
I just
over on the conservative side rather than
I just like shit. I just like shit to be shit. I just shit like I mean, I'd like shit to be stories. I want to go back to when we had like stories and storytelling. I mean, like
and
sometimes we had
characters as individual
yeah,
entities in their own right. But
exactly.
anyway, moving on. Back
Go
to
ahead.
the thing.
Go ahead, Brainstormer. Brainstormer, I why do you have the fucking 3D glasses on the Batman Who Laughs? I am so curious about that.
Well, actually, thank you for noticing that they are 3D glasses. I wanted to. I didn't just want to do Batman Who Laughs, so I decided to put those on. But I don't know. I had to like kind of change them to look like sunglasses because it just didn't work for some fucking reason when I tried to export the damn thing from Photoshop, well, a Photoshop app.
Okay.
So it's just regular, 3D glasses. So
All right.
then it wrapped with sunglasses.
I was just always curious, like, why do you have the Batman who laughs with wearing glasses?
I could have sworn he's explained it before when you were on stream, but I could be wrong,
I
or it
know
might have just been a long time ago.
It was a while ago.
And anyway, back to the article.
All right.
Okay. May seem a daunting move to deviate from source material because the comics serve as the foundation of the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe, specifically the Ultimate comics line, which I believe wasn't really received well after a certain threshold. But over the years, these giant leaps of faith have become advantageous to the success of Marvel Studios. It also helps to notice that a single change in a character's detail or story arc never lost Marvel a chunk of its fan base.
Okay, well, we'll address the first part first because I actually have a problem with the first thing that they said, which is the idea that the changes are what made Marvel successful, because that's just straight up counterfactual. And here's how I know. Because if you remember the comic book movie landscape before the MCU, they changed fuck tons of shit, basically on either a whim or because they felt they needed to fix the source material. The biggest strength of Marvel when it made it onto the scene was how accurate they were to the source material. I mean, yes, they made broad strokes changes to the source material, but like for example, compare the Fox X-Men to X-Men 97. X-Men 97 basically being the stand-in for basically just a straight up adaptation of the comics for the most part. And the 2000s X-Men removed all of the comic booky shit and just made it a generic sci-fi action movie.
Yeah, they even made fun of the costumes.
Oh my god, that scene.
Yeah, but that's my point. Prior to the MCU, when comics were what I like to call the beta test era, they often would just straight up take out anything relating to over the top comic bookiness. And what was unique and remarkable about the MCU was largely how loyal they were, all things considered. Yeah, they made surface level changes to make it work better for a movie, but A, that was going to happen anyway, and B, it's the same level of loyalty that, for example, Peter Jackson had to Lord of the Rings, because he made changes to Lord of the Rings as well, but the core of the character and most of the details were still intact.
So, all right, okay. So, I think the idea and the reason behind the shaving off the comic book edges basically is to make it as sort of like appealing to the audience. That's why there's so much tactical armor instead of like costumes. You have like what people would call tactical, where it's just like tactical gear.
Tactical.
Yeah.
I think it's an extension of what you were saying earlier with we can't see comics as their own genre or their own medium in their own right, so we have to dumb it down and make it into whatever is the closest next genre. Like we can't have an X-Men that's an actual comic book adaptation, but we can have an X-Men that's a generic sci-fi action movie.
Exactly, because they don't have enough faith in the medium to be appealing to people who are, I guess, old men.
Yeah. And again, that's why the MCU was such a breath of fresh air and such a distinctive force in the genre when they went, actually, no, if you just leave the comics alone for the most part, people liked it better. Because as it turns out, there was intrinsic value to the original comics that you don't need to like that's ultimately what it amounted to back in the day was comics have no intrinsic the comic book superhero genre has no intrinsic value of its own, so it's our job to fix it and make it valuable instead of leaving it
Pretty
alone.
much.
Whereas
Which
Kevin
is always
Feige,
sad.
being the massive comic book nerd that he is, his impulse was leave as much intact as you can because the value was already there. All you have to do is translate it to the screen.
I mean, like so much of like comic books has like a universal appeal to it anyway. Like,
Mhm.
and it has like it has multiple genres, different interpretations of different genres. Like you have horror, you have fantasy, you have sci-fi, you
And
Yeah,
have modern. Like,
that's what I've always loved about superhero comics is they can take something from any other genre, turn it up to an 11, push it farther than anyone in that genre would have thought to, and it all sort of coexist together. Like you want street level super soldiers, we got you. You want sorcerers, we got you. You want cosmic shit, we got you. You want absurd cosmic shit, a la Jack Kirby, we've got like there the greatest thing about superhero comics is they have a capacity to see what other genres are capable of, absorb it, turn it up to an 11, and honestly take it farther than the original would have.
pretty much, and it's just like, and I mean, these things like they print money for a reason, you know.
Yeah, and
Like,
and the comics themselves have existed for almost a century for a reason. Like
I
like
mean, like, there's a reason why, like, Batman, Superman, Spider Man, like, now Iron Man, these are household names.
yeah,
Like, my mother knows who Superman is.
yeah, Action Comics #1 came out in 1938. We're sitting in 2022. And provided the social justice warriors don't completely nerf the medium in the meantime, we're coming up on the century mark with regards to the superhero genre in comics.
isn't like an issue of Action Comics #1 worth like millions or billions of dollars?
Yeah, it's fuck off expensive. Yeah.
I only know that because I've seen an episode of Comic Book Man about it.
I mean, yeah, Action Comics #1 is one of those that if you find one that's in semi decent condition, you can just print money. Same thing with Amazing Fantasy 15, where Spider-Man first showed up. Or like Showcase 4, which was I believe the original Flash. It was either the original Golden Age Flash or it was the Silver Age Flash. I can't remember. But in any case, most of those first comics, the like first appearance of the big 7 for DC or the big 4 or 5 for Marvel, you can just print money with at this point.
All right. And what about the second part? I guess.
Let me see.
Second, read it again.
But
Yeah.
over the years, these giant leaps of faith have become advantageous to the success of Marvel Studios. It also helps to notice that a single change in a character's detail or story arc never lost Marvel a chunk of its fan base.
That's bullshit.
It depends on the detail, and it depends on what you change it to. And here's the thing.
Lost a fuck ton of fans. That shit was awful.
Yes,
I would say it's become more prevalent recently
because they stopped realizing what they were doing. But that's my point partially. The thing is, it depends on what you change and what you change it to. If the retcon you're making is equal to or greater than the original source material, people are fine with it. But if it takes something away from the character, then you will be burnt on a metaphorical pyre, because that's the thing. And this is another thing that ultimately undermines his overall point here, which is, in order to know what it is acceptable to change, or what to change it to, or what not to change, or what not to change it to, it helps to have a familiarity and a love, or at least a respect for the original goddamn source material. Someone outside of the medium or outside of the genre either doesn't have any respect for the material or simply doesn't wish to more often. So to them, all the details are superfluous. All the details are free game to change. but the people who know and or care about the comics know that some things will be irrelevant or will be praised if you change them, and some things are so sacrosanct that if you change them, people will beat you within an inch of your life. Um, and here's a good example. It's a DC example, but it's a good example. People always bitch at me for not liking the possession retcon of Dr. Fate. And oftentimes when I bring up things change that I don't like, they go, "Oh, you're just a purist. You just want everything to be a 1-to-1 ratio of how it originally was." But here's the thing. When I look at retcons, I always ask myself, does this retcon make the story or character better, or does it make the story and character worse?
Ugh.
The perfect example being, I hate the possession retcon for Dr. Fate. However, I love the retcon that was introduced in Smallville, which, to their credit, Black Adam actually kept, which was Dr. Fate can actually see the future. That was not originally one of his powers or one of his defining powers, but because it made sense for the character and it gave a context to why he's called Dr. Fate. He's Dr. Fate because he can see people's fates. That makes perfect sense. Because it was a good retcon, I'm glad to see that it appears to have made its way into the internal of the mythos. The possession retcon, on the other hand, nerfs and ruins the character beyond reckoning and completely ignores that Nabu was his surrogate adoptive father and turns Nabu into this soulless entity who just needs a meat suit. Never mind that in the Golden Age he made himself a body and could have again if he wanted to. But that's neither here nor there. My point is, there's a difference between a good retcon and a bad retcon. And in order to know the difference between a good retcon and a bad retcon, you probably have to know about the source material, and you probably have to care at least enough to determine the difference between a good retcon and a bad retcon. Moving on.
Yeah, I don't really know what to say after that.
Let me see. Basically, like, so, what? Say that again, Brainstormer.
No, I don't have anything to say. So
Oh, I like the deviation. My issue with the deviation from the source material is the fact that, like, before it wasn't as egregious and it made sense in some areas where it made sense, but now it's so liberal and it's so egregious that I feel like even when but it's Disney, right? So even when it does cost them fans, they're going to pretend like, oh, nothing's wrong. The house is on fire.
There used to be respect, love, and knowledge of the source material. Now there's actual contempt for respect, knowledge,
Exactly.
or
There's
love
actually
for the source
exactly.
material.
It's like now it feels it's less of, oh, I love these characters and I love bringing them to the big screen, and now it's like, how can we like, I have to
How
work
can
with
I
these
screw
glorified
this up
action
the
figures.
most possible? How can I deliberately ruin this the
I
most?
have I have to make money. I have to work with these glorified action figures. This is beneath me. You know.
I know you were just quoting what people's reaction is, but the whole glorified action figures thing made me immediately want to go fuck you.
I agree with you. I
yeah,
agree with
It's just like
I
I
have.
go ahead.
I was gonna say like that. As soon as he said that, I had the immediate reaction of wanting to put my fist through a wall. Which,
I know.
in fact, the only other time I've ever wanted to do that, well, I think I've said that a few times here, but it's very rare I ever get that angry. But the other one I can
Unless you're dealing with your asshole black sheep uncle there,
shut
and then it becomes a
stop.
regular thing.
Stop. Was Spider-Man Far From Home. God, I hated that movie.
The Mysterio thing.
The everything thing.
Honestly, am I the only one who thinks that it would have been smarter just to actually make Mysterio a hero from another universe instead of keeping... Like, that's one of the few cases where I was okay with them changing his comic book backstory. Because, like, the false backstory he came up with to trick Peter was actually more compelling and interesting than his like special effects stroke stuntman backstory.
Like, he didn't even have that in the movie. It was that he was a former Stark employee.
Didn't they mention that he used to work in visual effects before Stark found him? I thought
Yeah,
they did.
I thought he was a theater actor.
Yeah. Anyway, let's move.
Terrible. It's just that it's fucking terrible.
The only thing good in it was the cliffhanger. Anyway, moving on.
Yeah. Deviations from the source material made Marvel successful. Yes and no.
Again, this is directly counterfactual, because if you look at the comic book genre as it was pre-MCU, they were quote unquote fixing the source material left, right, center, and sideways. They did it with Constantine, they did it with the X-Men, they did it with Spider-Man, albeit to a lesser degree. That was mostly due to the fact that technology wasn't where it should have been, and so Sam Raimi could do less. But that's not here nor there. But my point is, did you pay attention to the genre at all during the, like, what I call the beta test era? Because they changed things left, right, center, and sideways to quote unquote fix the material.
We're making it better. We're uplifting the source material now, Dalton.
And usually that involved grounding it and making it air quotes realistic to a degree where all of the interesting shit was gone.
Yeah. Aren't you excited?
No. I want the weirdest, and to some degree I will say this to the MCU, and this is one of the reasons why I've personally found Phase 4 to be kind of more disappointing than it should have been, which is they spent the last 10 years saying, wait for us to get all the setup done so we can do the weirder stuff. Wait for us to get all the setup done so we can do the weirder stuff. And then they finished the setup, and I'm like, okay, so now are you going to do the weirder stuff? And they were like, no, we're going to spend half of this phase treating it like it's Phase 1 again and having to reestablish everything. Because that was the biggest what the fuck moment for me was, why did they start over with Black Widow and Shang-Chi as though none of the previous events had happened and none of the weird stuff that had been set up already had happened. Whereas they could have and should have just gone, okay, we spent the last 10 years bringing you guys up to speed and boiling the frog, so now that everyone's on board, here's the weird shit. That's why for all of its faults, I really, really enjoy Multiverse of Madness, because Sam Raimi and I seem to have been on the same page with Multiverse of Madness of like, no, the multiverse is not the most interesting part of Doctor Strange 2. It's the Lovecraftian shit that's the most interesting part of Doctor Strange 2. But that's neither here nor there. My point is they should have essentially taken their own lesson and gone, it worked really well when we were going further than any other studio in this genre, so why don't we keep going further? What they actually did was, well, we finished all 3 phases, so now we have to start over from scratch for some reason.
We have to set up for the more female driven characters, I guess.
It's again, it's not even about that. It's about you were setting up Celestials, you were setting up cosmic entities, you were setting up all the shit that I honestly was waiting for very, very, very patiently. And instead of doing anything with any of those characters, we're acting as though Black Widow is Iron Man 1 again for some reason, and Shang-Chi is Iron Man 1 again. And we can't actually have Eternals resemble Guardians of the Galaxy 1 or 2, or Thor Ragnarok, or Suicide Squad 2, or Shazam. We have to undo all of the comic book shit in it and turn it into an Oscar bait movie. Because reasons. God, I hate that. Anyway, moving on.
All right. It's no secret that many aspects of Marvel movies have never been so accurate. Nate Moore also noted. The best example of that for me was Marcus and McFeely, who weren't comic guys coming up, but were like, wait, Captain America, this seems a bit weird. What if we kind of looked at it this way? And they weren't married to anything. Nothing was, There was nothing sacrosanct.
Bullshit.
And I think that's important to be able to go, look, the source material is great, and I love it, and the comics work great in the
This
medium
is so condescending.
they were built in, but that's not a direct one-to-one translation into the best version of the movie.
Except the MCU is actually its strongest when they do try for one-to-one as much as they can. And again, knowing when to improve things or change things because they're already familiar with the material, which is something only someone with the background in the material would know. That's why, despite the fact that No Way Home definitely took elements from One More Day, no one had a problem with it because someone somewhere knew enough to go, everyone who knows about One More Day hates this, so we're going to take just enough from it to make it work, and we're going to ignore like hell everything else. Which again, you in this context, you only know what to change and what to leave alone if you know and care about the material. And that has always been the biggest strength, or was the biggest strength of the MCU, is they knew and cared about the material, and they weren't afraid to go into comic bookiness for comic bookiness sake. Unlike literally everything that came before the MCU in this genre, where they tried to ground and fix and normalize the comic booky stuff to the point of non-existence. Moving forward.
It just seems like they want to turn the MCU into this just kind of bland, generic sort of sci-fi adventure genre.
Yeah, like again, the MCU was always at its strongest when it leaned into what made the source material awesome. But I guess they're just not doing that anymore now, which does explain a few things about Phase 4.
Yeah.
With the possible exception of Multiverse of Madness, because I genuinely think it leaned in as far as it could.
Yeah, he was on a leash, so he did as much as he could do.
Well, the other half of that was, for some reason, they didn't let Sam Raimi write the thing. They had Michael Waldron write the thing, which I'm just sitting there like, Michael Waldron has only had like 3 writing assignments, one on Community, one on Rick and Morty, and one on Loki. And rather than have Sam Raimi, the guy that basically put the modern day comic book genre on the map with the Spider-Man trilogy and or Evil Dead, write the movie and direct it, you're having the guy who has literally 3 writing credits to his name relevant to this to write it, which is why.
So maybe they think, maybe the reason for that is because they think that like a writer with lesser credit won't really give them as much won't really give them problems if they want it to be written a certain way, or if they want things to be done to be if they want characters to be like expressed in certain ways,
Yeah, that's probably right, but it's still complete bullshit. You should have just let Sam Raimi go full tilt Doctor Strange fanboy and hang the consequences, because I can guarantee you that if Sam Raimi had written that movie, it would have gone down way better with people.
Right. Anyway. Well.
Yeah, moving on.
Yep. This might be a major deal breaker for some and a heartbreaking truth for fans. Many of these changes in modern approaches influence the flow of their comics counterparts. Yeah, no shit. That's just how it happens.
It's part of the fucking problem sometimes, actually.
Take, for example, Nick Fury. He was originally white in the books, but Samuel Jackson's portrayal was so influential and compelling that Marvel used him as the basis for the succeeding issues. Actually, if I remember correctly,
go ahead. You're doing the rant I was gonna do, probably. So
Mark Millar, like in the Ultimate Comics, he was turned black, and was based off Samuel L. Jackson.
Yeah, he was Nick Fury Jr. So yeah, the comics actually came first on that one, and the MCU has a habit of mixing together the original 616 canon and the Ultimates canon, and it always has. So all they did there was they took Nick Fury from the Ultimates and went, this guy was based on Samuel L. Jackson anyway. Why don't we see if Samuel L. Jackson would be available? And because Samuel L. Jackson is yet another actor who is a giant fucking nerd, he went, you want me to play Nick Fury and get together the Avengers? How much do I have to pay you? which to be fair is the correct opinion. Good for you, Sam.
What did he say? He was like, I remember.
He jumped at the opportunity. They said, "Hey Sam, we want you to play Nick Fury," and his response was, "When and where?"
I remember there was some interview he did where he was answering questions, and it said something like, do you like comic books? And he said, yes. And it was another question where they went, do you like anime? He said, yes. And then he went, I like hentai too. I was like,
I remember that.
Sam. I remember an interview. Speaking of how much of a giant nerd and how glorious it is that Sam Jackson is, I remember a story that went around when he found out he had the opportunity to play a character in Star Wars. He was already over the moon about it, and then he found out that Sir Christopher Lee was going to play Count Dooku, and that he was going to have a scene opposite Christopher Lee playing Count Dooku. And he seriously completely flubbed the first take because he was so awestruck by the fact that he was playing opposite Christopher Lee. And it's in moments like these where I'm like, yeah, no, M. Night Shyamalan made the right choice making Samuel L. Jackson Mr. Glass. That was typecasting, but it was very good typecasting.
it was really good.
Yeah, honestly, the East Rail 217 trilogy or his superhero trilogy is basically the only M. Night Shyamalan movies of his that I actually like of his. Like, his superhero trilogy is his best movies.
Like I will say I'm really disappointed in Glass because like so much of it was just backstory and only part of it was the actual what was like happened in the actual present, and I wanted to see him do more with it than just backstory followed by like
it could have been bigger. I'll say though, I actually kind of have the opposite opinion because there were a lot of hipster commentary moments in Unbreakable that I didn't really like. But I liked Glass better because I felt it was more sincere in its comic book fanboyism. It didn't feel the need to pseudo intellectualize it as much as Unbreakable did. But one thing I will give him, and I don't know if this is me reading too much into it, which it may very well be, or whether this is intentional. But looking back on Unbreakable, having seen the entire trilogy, there's a running theme that the more self-actualized the characters get, the more close to comic books they actually steer. So part of me wonders if Elijah having all sorts of hipstery take on why comic books are important might have been him not being fully actualized yet, and that's why there's less heavy-handed commentary in Glass, is because now that Elijah has found his place in the world, he's less pseudo-intellectual about it.
I can see that actually. And it becomes more of a comic book movie.
Yeah.
All right.
A lot of critics really hated Glass because they wanted it to be all pseudo-intellectual like Unbreakable was, and I just kept watching these reviews of people dumping on Glass for not having enough commentary, and I'm like, you mean it was sincere, and you don't like it because it was sincere? Oh, however shall you cope? Like, I always
Yeah,
hate that
pretty
whenever like the pseudo intellectual take is done on things. It's always this didn't cater enough to my meta narrative. It was sincere, as though that's an intellectual thing. And I'm like, yes, in a sane world, that is the correct intellectual position. Be sincere.
I will say this. I really like the cinematography and the colors, which the colors just really stood out to me in Glass specifically, just because
Yeah, no, it's very much leaning into the like comic bookness of it all, which I really love.
could have been more coherent, though. I think.
I mean, yeah,
I
but to be
agree. Yeah.
fair, um, apparently M. Night wrote the entire trilogy back in like 2002 after the first Unbreakable came out, and he had just been like sitting on those scripts for however long it took to make the other two. So I think part of what it was if Split and Glass had come out in like 2003 or 2005, it would have been ahead of its time, but because he couldn't get them made until after his self-indulgent period and then and falling from grace and having to claw his way back up and work with Blumhouse because he had a fall in like the mid 2000s, and he had to kind of clean up his act and get right again. He couldn't make them when they should have probably been made. He had to wait until 2016 that Split came out? I think it was 2016 that Split came out, and then 2019 was when Glass came out. Because I know Glass was 2019 because I ranked my top 10 list of movies that year, and Glass was number 2 and Joker was number 1, and that was 2019.
Yeah.
Oh man, like I've yet to watch a Joker.
Dude, didn't we do a
Review
response video to a review of Joker?
that, and we also did a review of Joker.
Was I there for that?
Yeah.
You were there for that because that was the one that went on for like 6 hours because we kept getting sidetracked. And that happens a lot more often when you're here to kind
Oh
of
no,
stir
wait, I
the
have.
drink.
I have. Wait, no, I have seen Joker. Have I? I don't even fucking remember, to be honest with you. I'm fucking sick and talking out of my head. So
I'm gonna have to send you that video now just to prove that we did that video. Anyway, moving on.
Yeah. This should not discourage aspiring writers to give up on their dreams. Think of it as a chance to see through and beyond what is already laid out on the table. Billy Moore wants to say that comics are a source of inspiration, not a manual to be followed strictly. Okay, that
As though. Go ahead.
well, that I can agree with, but that doesn't really come across in what he's saying, though.
No, and what's more, it's not like comic book fans don't already do that. Again, if you want to see some of the most vicious criticism of certain comics that you will ever get from your life, ask a Spider-Man fan about One More Day, or ask a Batman fan about Asbar, or ask
A Superman fan about Brian Michael Bendis' run on Superman, or
Oh my god, he destroyed Super Sons. Oh,
yeah, just the
or what was it? Superman, Son of Kal-El. Was that him?
yeah. Yeah,
ugh.
that was him too. Or ask a Doctor Fate fan about everything after Day of Vengeance, because I can give you that lecture if you want me to.
Right.
Because but point being, there are very few people on this earth that are more critical of when comics get shit wrong than comic book fans themselves. We're still waiting on a fix for One More Day in Asbar, by the way. Comic book industry.
I need to get Super Sons. I just realized.
Yes, you do. It was a very good. It was a very good run, and as you know, I'm not even really a Superman or Batman guy.
Yeah,
But
it was a very good run. It was an excellent run. That's why so many people like
Honestly, like, I've seen reviews of it and I've seen the art for it, and the art really grabs me. It's really good.
speaking of really good modern comics, was it Tomasi that did Hawkman?
I think so. Yeah.
Tomasi's
I've,
Hawkman is really good too.
okay. Okay. Just to kind of detox us before we dive more into the shit. I wanted to make mention of a fan film that got some garner over the last week or so.
What's that?
It is a Nightmare on Elm Street fan film called uh, Dylan's New Nightmare, which I think is based on the film Wes Craven's New Nightmare, which I haven't seen, to be fully honest. To be honest, I haven't watched any of the Nightmare on Elm Street movies.
It's a shame this didn't come out during October. It would have been more thematically appropriate then.
Well, basically, the thing I was going to just show right now is an image of an actor who is like a voice actor and done impressions of like Freddy Krueger, who is going to be playing Freddy Krueger for this fan film. But more so that demon Freddy Krueger instead of Freddy Krueger, the classic movie.
So okay, so wait, so it's the the demonic version of Freddy Krueger from the Wes Craven's New Nightmare.
Yeah, yeah. It's like supposed to be like a sequel to it, like the
Oh,
fan film.
that's kind of unfortunate because like classic Freddy Krueger is best Freddy Krueger in my opinion. But let's watch it.
Oh no, we're not watching. I'm just like it hasn't come out yet. Like this is like a promo image I found of it, and I think it looks cool. You know,
I mean, it looks amazing. I'll say that.
dude, it's a fan film, and this thing I love about fan films, kind of more than most of modern movies these days. It's just that you can really just feel the like immense passion and just creativity and just effort put into these things.
And in a sane world, this would in a sane world this would be a golden age for Hollywood because they have more access to talent now than they ever have in history because of the internet. In a sane world, you could have people send these fan films to Hollywood, and Hollywood would just go, "How much do how much do you need to do this with a movie budget?"
I will also say this: Jackie Earle Haley, who played in the Platinum Dunes version of Nightmare on Elm Street,
The remake.
he deserved a better movie.
Yeah, he was a good actor.
The
movie was not good around him, but he was a good actor in it.
Yeah. Ironically, there are some deleted scenes that actually kind of would work better in.
Why the fuck does that always happen? Always, whenever there's deleted scenes in a movie, I always end up liking them better than the scenes that are actually in the goddamn movie. Why? What the fuck is wrong with Hollywood in this day and age that they leave the more interesting scenes on the cutting room floor and they put the less interesting scenes in the actual goddamn movie? It always fucking happens, and I hate it.
I honestly couldn't say.
Like, why is it that all the interesting shit is on the cutting room floor?
Yeah.
Why is it the deleted scenes always, almost to a fault, work better than the scenes that are actually put in the movie?
Maybe they just think they don't work. I guess that's the only thing you could really say. They probably just think they don't work for the movie.
Which is weird because some of the scenes that I have seen, like deleted scenes that I've watched, often, specifically, and then this weird thing kind of bringing up Marvel, is that a lot of those scenes kind of if you put those in the movie, gives both progress the plot more coherently.
And gives depth to the characters.
Yeah, gives added context to the characters, and just like it's weird to me that is a thing. Like,
and I know because I'm biased and therefore would always think that Doctor Strange has this the worst. But I swear to God, there is an entire plot point missing because a very crucial to Strange's arc scene in the first movie got cut out. Because in the deleted scene, there's a scene where he's at his lowest point, and he's wandering through, should be Tibet but isn't because reasons. He's wandering through.
Kamar-Taj.
No, he's not at Kamar-Taj yet. He's wandering through Nepal, and he's on the street, and he's at his lowest point. He gets mugged, and people take his watch. That part's in the movie. The part that isn't in the movie is after he gets mugged and people take his watch. He winds up seeing this dog walking to the lake. And even at his lowest and darkest point, he still feels compelled to try and heal this dog. And in the deleted scene, that's why Mordo starts paying attention to him, and that's why he takes him to Kamar-Taj. And it also establishes that even at Doctor Strange's lowest point, they're still good at him. In the movie, however, because that scene does not exist, we're left with the question of why does he bring Strange to Kamar-Taj at all, and why does Strange care so much about the Hippocratic Oath? Because he's the kind of asshole who normally doesn't care about those things. So this arc pivotal scene to Doctor Strange is just left on the cutting room floor for what reason I don't fucking know.
Well, let me see. Maybe sometimes it's due to time restraints. So maybe they thought
Yeah, but here's the problem with it's time constraints theory. Doctor Strange is actually one of the shortest of the MCU movies.
Sure.
It's 10 minutes shorter than almost any other. It's 10 minutes shorter than almost any other movie in the MCU. And again, I can understand why there need to be some deleted scenes. I do, but when one of the scenes you decide that it's okay to delete is literally pivotal to why this character is worth caring about at his lowest points, and therefore why he gets essentially chosen to be the hero he gets chosen to be, you kind of need to leave that in there, especially when you have 10 extra minutes to play around with. I would also argue that several of the villains' best scenes were left on the cutting room floor, but those I understand because one of those scenes revolved around Caecilius telling a priest that his god was false and then killing him. So I understand why that scene was cut by virtue of the fact of we need to not piss off the overwhelming Christian average moviegoers. Although in that regard, I would argue that number one, it's the villain saying it, and number two, he's obviously wrong in the context of the universe. So it goes back to this whole new thing of we can't actually have our villains do evil things because that might confuse people, even though he's well established to be the villain.
Okay,
I
so
agree. There's this sort of weird need to redeem villains or have them not be seen as evil, but as morally gray, which I find strange, honestly.
And honestly, you could argue that with that scene where he kills the priest, it gives more depth to him as a villain than otherwise. So even if you wanted to play the moral ambiguity card, you could easily do that with that scene. But again, we can't have an anti-Christian scene even if it's the villain doing it. Because that's the thing. If it were Strange saying that or the Ancient One saying that, I could understand why Christians would be pissed off. But it's the villain of the movie saying it, and he's later in the movie demonstrated to be wrong. So what the fuck?
We're in the age where villains aren't villains anymore; they're anti-heroes now. So
yeah, but even anti-heroes have to be more well-rounded than what the fuck
agree.
they did. Anyway, moving on.
Yeah, so just because my dumbass cannot view the article that you originally sent me because apparently for some fucking reason, free viewing, I have a limited amount every month. And I realized,
Your computer is a potato.
yeah, so we're just gonna move on to Wakanda Forever review.
Uh,
Okay,
Okay.
so I got to see this Monday, and I've had time to really mull it over.
Mm-hmm.
So general before we get into anything really, it's fine. You know, like I don't really have anything negative or bad to say. I have some critiques, but that's about it.
so my understanding of Wakanda Forever is largely that it's either pretty okay or meh. Like nothing, not terrible, not like fantastic, but in that nice middle ground of it's a good to
It's
meh-ish.
fine.
It's fine. There we go. Thank you.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Right.
Like I didn't mind it.
Yes.
The most I will say for it is I thought it was better than the first one, but that's because there's so many glaring flaws in the first one that most people ignored when it came out.
Like the terrible CGI.
Oh, I also want to bring up. To be fair, the CGI was only bad in like the final fight
Yeah.
of the first one, and again, that given like everything I've heard about like how the visual effects artists are treated and kind of
Oh yeah, it's understandable. Yeah.
yeah, so I'm willing to be like, I don't think it's offensively forgettable Dragon Turtle. I would say average.
I wouldn't call it forgettable because there's a lot of really poignant scenes due to the obvious connections between T'Challa the character and Chadwick Boseman the actress, and they
Also,
laid that on.
like I even said this in the first when we talked about the first one one time, or briefly brought it up. The music is great. Like Ludwig Göransson, I'm pretty sure I fucked up the last name, is an amazing composer. Like I love his work.
Mm-hmm.
Also, for the record, this is a fan made poster, and I have the link to the original one down in the description.
Oh, that's why it looks like this.
Yeah, I tried to look for an official poster, but none of them really looked good. So
yeah, which is in and of itself an indictment on Hollywood lately that they can't seem to fucking produce a poster that is.
well, I mean, there are some like I used official like posters for like when we reviewed Black Adam. That was
Okay,
cool.
yeah. So it's not all of Hollywood, but
yeah.
My point is that adequate trailers or adequate posters seem to be rare, much like theme songs in movies um or like theme tunes in soundtracks are rarer than they should be.
Right. Yeah, so kind of getting more into the movie, I guess. So you know what? I'll get the elephant out of the room. Riri Williams. She's not an unlikable character in this. However, something you had brought up last week, Corrupt, kind of stuck with me when I was thinking about this over the week after I'd seen the movie. She has the America Chavez in Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness problem.
What's that?
She's just a MacGuffin.
Yeah, in order to make her non-offensive, they basically have to sand off all the rough edges of her personality and turn her into a living MacGuffin.
Yeah, pretty much. Because she, spoiler alert, by the way, she develops a
vibranium detector.
Yeah, vibranium detector, as the U.S. government or the world is trying to search for more vibranium to use because Wakanda is being stingy.
It's shit like that it's just this irritating like I'm better than you shit that just makes me just completely dislike her. Like outside of the fact that outside of her personality, it's just everything about her.
I'll be honest, and just this is gonna sound kind of fucked up, but I might have to ask for a card from you, Corrupt, or a pass. A pass.
You're brown.
Oh god.
You kind of made her like a standard brainy black chick.
Yeah.
Like, cause she goes to MIT, like she's in Boston, and again, I'm not like it's. I don't know. I don't really have anything to say because like I didn't really get a sense of the character at all. Like some of the things that are even mentioned, like to give you things to like care about the character or like have empathy or anything, are mentioned at the end of the fucking movie, like or briefly alluded to, but never brought up or continued until the end, the very end.
I will say on my end, I don't mind the child genius trope quite so much, and it seems like Corrupt for you, the child genius trope is just generally a no-go.
So here's my thing, right? It's not so much the child genius trope. I don't have an issue with that as a trope in and of itself. It's just with Riri Williams, it's like I can do everything better than everyone who has come before me, and I should be handed everything because I can do everything better than everything that's
Okay,
They didn't really do that with her in the movie though, is the thing. Like her big things are she makes the vibranium detector. She helps some people with their homework in her classes, and she's smart enough to actually get paid for them. And she uses some of her own tech and some of Wakanda's tech to make the Ironheart armor. So it's
honestly, I will make this like the iron armor and the Ironheart armor in the MCU looks really bad. Like I'm not even talking CGI. I'm just talking design.
She looks like a shitty Kamen Rider.
Honestly, if they made her an anime fan, and she designed an Ironheart suit to look like a Kamen Rider, that'd be fucking cool. You know?
Yeah. Like, but they didn't do that. They just made like this, I guess, armor for her, and it just looks really fucking terrible.
they were trying to keep as close to the comic as they could, and it didn't translate because I think it was partially the CG. I think if they had done a couple more renders on it, it would have been fine. But
I think my thing is that like I guess what irritates me is the fact that like she goes to fucking Target and gets like armor and that's where she gets her technology from. I don't know. I just feel like it was handled so much. I just feel like it's handled so much better with Tony Stark than it is with Riri Williams, who just seems like a prodigy. And that just irritates me. That also, I admit that there is some bias from the comics too. I will admit that.
Again, to the movie's credit, it did its best to sand off most of the rough edges of her.
To be fair, there's also a thing. I'm sorry for interrupting, but
go ahead.
Riri Williams in the comics really has no personality, to my knowledge, because I've never wanted to pick up a comic with her in it.
So basically, Riri's personality is she's basically she's kind of an obnoxious. She's basically your like a really. I don't want to say this because this sounds slightly racist.
She's Aquila, obviously, with power armor.
She's basically an obnoxious stereotype of a really sassy, condescending black chick.
I don't think I've ever met one.
She is.
I don't have any reference.
Really obnoxiously condescending.
Well, the other thing is, and this is what ultimately makes me want to bash my head into a wall with regards to Riri Williams. She has a chip on her shoulder from being "quote unquote" oppressed.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing that turned a lot of people off.
But here's the thing. Here's where it goes from standard SJW bullshit to you have genuinely fucked up beyond all reason, Brian Michael Bendis. they give her the "Grr, I'm oppressed" backstory, and they also make sure you know full well she's not oppressed, because in one scene in a flashback when she's in like elementary school, she keeps trying to get she keeps trying to trick her teacher into saying something that she can construe as oppression so that she can spend the rest of her life opposing the aforementioned non-oppression. And because her teacher is actually so accommodating and nice to her that her teacher refuses to oppress her in any way. She basically forces her teacher to come up with the most absurd thing that no one would be able to do, so that she can then take that and internalize that as oppression or limitation. She basically needs people to give her arbitrary limitations so that she can then develop a chip on her shoulder to oppose them
Right.
in the comics. She
Yeah.
wasn't like that in the movie, though, thank God.
Right. Okay, with all that talk, I think I might have an idea how to make that character work better, but I'll save that until after we done talking more about it, because there is kind of a gripe I have with a certain character. But I want to talk about the antagonist first,
All right.
because that's part of a lot of discussion between you
Is it
and
no
Dalton.
more?
I like the actor. I don't think there was anything egregious done to the character, really. I don't mind the Mesoamerican culture influences. I can understand the change. I think I like the look, the designs, and all that. But yeah, like he was one of the better parts of.
Yeah, we've already discussed my thoughts on Namor, because I think we talked about this a couple weeks ago. But yeah, I genuinely didn't mind what they did to Namor, honestly.
Again, the weirdest thing, like from an aesthetic standpoint, that kind of bugged me is that he has facial hair.
I know for some reason that bugged you, but it didn't.
Okay, because and my reasoning is because every time I've seen Namor depicted, is that he has a clean face, and I've just never pictured him have facial hair.
Well, I mean, this isn't really Namor though. This is Namor, so
Well, they also turned him into a Mesoamerican, and I assume part of the choice for the mustache was, if he's a Mesoamerican character, then he should look Mesoamerican, and a lot of Mesoamerican people have facial hair. So
Ahem, you racist fuck.
I have a pass that you previously gave to me. Shut up.
I'm just saying, like, I prefer stay clean
wait,
shaven.
I prefer
Yeah.
like
Yes, I know you do, but in general, Mesoamerican people tend to be hairier genetically.
what are they like? What are they like? Chimps or something? Like what the hell? Harrier.
No, as in they tend to have facial hair and body hair more.
All right, I'm watching you, Dalton.
Oh, shut up.
For the record, we have all this recorded for posterity, so.
Exactly.
Yes, I know, and
But
I will stand by my statement. Genetics exist, goddammit.
yeah, I didn't really have an issue with him because everything. Again, I'll be honest, Marvel Comics is not my strongest suit. I know a bit of things, and I've done research for certain things, but everything I know about Namor, due to my limited knowledge of him, personality-wise, they didn't fuck him up.
He's still the asshole Aquaman.
Yeah. Yeah, that's about it. Again, like there really is only one character that I'm kind of irked with.
Is Jumbaku?
No. It's actually Shuri, T'Challa's sister.
Okay, I'm curious here because I wouldn't have predicted that.
Really? Oh,
Yeah, I wouldn't have predicted you having an issue with how they did Shuri. But go ahead.
See you later, Dragon Turtle. He has to go.
Alright.
All right. See you, Dragon Turtle.
Goodbye, Turtle of Dragons.
Well, he has Mechanicus as his profile pic, so
Anyway, what was it about Shuri that rubbed you the wrong way here?
it was mainly when she became Black Panther. Not so much her being Black Panther. I'm fine with that because I know it's both in the comics and it seems like a right. I mean, personally, I would have preferred it be Okoye, one of the Dora Milaje and stuff.
And I've been
Yeah.
saying this. I've been saying this since Chadwick Boseman passed. They should have just made it M'Baku. Because they're never doing anything with the man-ape identity either way. So just make M'Baku Black Panther.
He worships a gorilla god, so that I feel like that would be.
Yeah,
but they can't ever actually use the mantle or identity of man-ape is what I'm saying.
Bro, you can't have a teen girl power movie if it's a guy as the Black Panther, bro.
No, I'm just okay. I don't even think that was it in what they were trying to do, but
all right, how can you not say it's what the movie was trying to do? Like, really?
Because they actually justified it in the context of the movie, and it wasn't
just because you can justify something and still have it fit a particular agenda that you want to do.
Yeah, but if it's justified, then by definition, there's nothing wrong with it. That's what justification means.
I'm not saying there isn't anything wrong with it per se. I'm just saying it's true. They wanted a girl power movie, so they got a girl power movie.
Okay,
I doubt they did. I think they were mostly just making a "Isn't it sad that Chadwick Boseman died?" movie. I think that was more
there's a reason why so much of the cast are the front facing cast are female characters.
Yeah, but that doesn't.
It's almost completely a female dominated cast.
That doesn't. Yes, obviously there are a bunch of feminist fucktards, and that's going to color it one way or the other. But I don't think they were making. This isn't the black girl equivalent of Captain Marvel or fucking She-Hulk. This isn't a girl power, girl the patriarchy movie. It's a movie where a female character happens to be grieving her dead brother because she was a scientist who should have, in theory, been able to save him, but partially due to his own stoicism and partially due to the fact that Wakandan technology isn't the panacea that she thought it was, she wasn't able to. And so her grief and her mother's grief is crucial to the movie. Now, again, as I said, I would have preferred if M'Baku became Black Panther, especially because they're never ever going to do anything with Man-8 because they would be pilloried in effigy if they tried. But that's neither here nor there. It doesn't bother me that Shuri became Black Panther, A, because they did it already in the comics, and B, because it's not we're warping this character or this world out of joint to make it a feminist power fantasy. It's this character is the POV character for this movie. She is the one who grieves. She is the one who, was instrumental in why her brother died in the context of the movie. Because again, he came to her at the last second, but because he waited too long and because Wakanda technology isn't the panacea it should be, she couldn't save him, and she blames herself for that. It's less Shuri being a stand-in for all womankind or Ramonda being a stand-in for all womankind, and more these specific female characters being these specific female characters.
There's a reason. There's a reason why they introduced Riri Williams in this particular fucking movie. Where all the main characters are like black females. Come on, don't piss on my head and tell me it's raining. What the fuck?
Okay,
I'm not telling you that, but I'm going to offer an alternative perspective as to why they chose to introduce Riri here specifically,
Brainstormer?
Which is technology.
Right. Okay.
This is the most technology-centric aspect of Phase 4. So
I'm sorry. I don't mean to be a dick or anything. I would like to get my point across.
Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. The reason for the record, I think it would have been Okoye because it made more sense because she was a warrior like T'Challa, and in the comics, Dora Milaje is technically supposed to be the potential wives for the Black Panther. Well, that never gets brought up here, so.
And again, and this is what I usually say whenever you bring up this point. Number one, the Dora Milaje are supposed to be the bodyguards of the Black Panther. They're not supposed to be candidates for the Black Panther.
I know, but logically, it makes more sense than Shuri because she doesn't really have any training or stuff. So I'm just
number one, she has royal blood, and number two, if you really need to emphasize the training thing, is it not feasible that T'Challa and her probably, he taught her things because brother and sister bond.
Maybe it's also because I'm biased because the actress who plays Okoye I think is really cool. Because she played Michonne in The Walking Dead. So,
I mean that may be part of it, but there are in-universe reasons why none of the Dora Milaje are candidates for Black Panther.
Can I please get my point across?
Go ahead.
Right. The reason why I don't really like Shuri after she became Black Panther is not so much she's Black Panther herself, but it's more so the decisions she makes when she is Black Panther or leader of Wakanda.
The being influenced by Killmonger thing?
Not even that. It's just that she is, and I tried to have this conversation with my uncle who I'd seen it with. Granted, I'm gonna be honest, he's kind of a normie in a way, where he will defend the movie when I'm trying to actually have a conversation about it. Not trying to be a dick about him or anything. I'm just
right. But go on. What decisions that she made when she became Black Panther did you have a problem with?
Even though she didn't do it, she was very dead set on killing Namor, or Namor, as Corrupt likes to correct me on that. Hold on.
Go ahead.
She's quick to her emotions, which, as a leader, something even T'Challa was capable of controlling. You're not supposed to let your emotions get the better of you for your people, which she was very much letting that. And many people died in the trap she had set against Namor and his people when they attacked. And
okay,
hold on. And she would not listen to counsel of M'Baku, who had told her that if she did kill
Namor.
Yeah, Namor.
Endless war.
Hold on. That, be in this war and stuff, and just she was acting very kind of petulant, and again, I get it, just the emotions running high and stuff. I get that, and it's just my logical part of the brain. As I've done study of military stuff and stuff like that, it's just, or how I've even viewed leadership and stuff like that. It's just it bugged me thinking.
Okay. In the defense of both Shuri and the movie, number one, she's a teenage girl, and number two, she's grieving.
I'm sorry, she's a teenager?
Yes. Yeah, she's a teenager. She's 16.
No, that was in Black Panther 2018. We're in timeline that.
Yeah, she's 19 now. Then.
No, she would.
Because she was 13 in the first movie.
No, what the fuck?
Are you serious?
But in any case, one, teenager, two, grieving, and three, and this is ultimately why it didn't bother me. The movie is not excusing her for that. The whole purpose of this subplot is for her to learn this particular lesson.
A child will lead them, literally.
Okay, I will address that as well in a second. But the point is, this is her character growth. She needs to get over her grief and get over her rage, grief induced rage, to be a better leader. And number two, not only is that the whole purpose of this particular subplot, but the movie addresses this by having her have Umbaku act as king regent while she is busy doing Black Panther things. So it's not even like, the movie is saying you did well by not giving in to your rage and now here's the throne. It's saying you did well by not giving into your rage, but you're still too young to be in this role. Therefore, King Regent. If she had taken the throne at the end, or if the movie was framing this as a non-issue, or even if it was framing it as she was in the right to do this, I'd agree with you. But the movie is not framing her as in the right for doing this.
Right.
It is framing it as something she needs to move past. And the movie addresses the whole "she's too immature to be king right now" or queen right now thing by having her have M'Baku act as king regent. So it didn't bother me.
Right, that's fair. I'm just like, in the moment of watching that, it's still very dumb to me.
Well, no.
I understand by way of movie logic why in an in-universe sense, I get where you're coming from, because it did kind of bother me too. But in an out-of-universe, yes, we're telling a story, so you have to give us some kind of leeway here, logic. I can understand that this whole movie is largely about grief and getting over the death of a loved one. So, and Shuri's grieving of T'Challa is like the emotional core of the movie. So we have to have a story arc or a subplot where she has to address the repressed rage she has against T'Challa dying, and she has to move past it because character growth.
Okay, fair enough. I'm not gonna shift my point on. I still think what she did as a leader was incredibly dumb.
Again, child
I'm not.
would be queen,
I don't care.
and
I don't care. If you're a leader, you get no leeway from me in that.
and
Man,
she didn't, which is why
making
M'Baku was king regent at the end.
making like a fucking I don't know. I think choosing her as the Black Panther, given everything, is probably not the best idea, but whatever.
Well, to be fair, she wasn't technically chosen, I guess. More or less. I don't know. It's complicated.
She
Because,
elected herself because she synthesized the newest dose of the heart shaped herb. So that's how that. But in any case, yeah, she
She
doesn't
elected
deserve to be
herself.
queen, right?
yeah,
She doesn't deserve to be queen right now, which is why M'Baku is king regent at the end. I would argue, because I've been saying this for years, since we can't do anything with Manape, because if we did anything with Manape, the entire world would explode. Since we can't do anything with Manape, and since Chadwick Boseman is no more, it would have made more sense for M'Baku to take the title of Black Panther. Not least of which because he actually looks physically imposing in the thing, whereas you have to keep reminding yourself there's a super soldier serum type thing involved. There's a super soldier serum type thing involved over and over again. Whenever like again, it's one of those things of, if
Pretend to be
M'Baku was in the Black
intimidated.
Panther armor, it would have seemed more reasonable because he already looks like a fucking he looks more like a unit even in the first movie than T'Challa does. Which, to be fair, the man was fighting cancer at the time, so I can't really fault him for that. But
Like I
point
said,
being,
pretend to be intimidated.
yeah, but point being, it's not like she goes through this arc and then immediately gets handed the throne. The movie acknowledges that she needs to act. He needs to act as king regent while she is getting her shit together. And it's a bit silly to hold her hold her accountable for one mistake she made in the heat of the moment when she was a child, and when she wasn't even expecting to get elevated to would-be queen status because, her brother died of totally not cancer but cancer 5 minutes ago, relatively speaking. So it doesn't bother me, and I think the movie did enough to where, yeah, I can see, obviously this plot isn't finished yet, and obviously you're setting her up to become female Black Panther and so on and so forth. But given that we all know that's where you were going, there are two options. You can either go full tilt social justice like She-Hulk did, or like WandaVision did at the end, or you can do it in the most reasonable and justifiable way you can, which I think the movie did its best to.
Right.
So that's why it doesn't bother me.
Again, basically, it's an okay film. Like, I don't really have anything too negative or too positive to say about it. It's okay.
Yeah, the most I'll say for it is it's better than the first one, but only by like one slot in my MCU ranking. It did enough to be one slot better than the first one. And that's me being as nice as I can conceivably be.
Hey, Greg, I have been meaning to ask, what is the image that you're using? Like, I'm trying to.
It's this is a this is a cancer cell from Cells at Work.
Does that work?
Yeah, it's a cell that was infected with cancer and he's mutating rapidly. It's from Cells at Work.
Okay.
Corrupt is literally cancer.
Ha!
But I'm kidding.
Because I knew, like, it looked familiar. At first, I was thinking the spider demons from Demon Slayer.
No, like he does kind of look like the spider demons from Demon Slayer. Yeah, I agree.
Like, it was the left eye that was making me think that, but I wasn't sure.
Yeah, like I might actually use his picture because I like the spider demons from Demon Slayer. They look cool. But like, yeah, it's it's cancer from Cells at Work. I guess that actually is pretty ironic. Yeah, corrupt cancer. Yeah, you're right.
And anyway, shall we move on to the last thing of the night?
I had while we were talking about Riri Williams, I came up with a sort of. Keep in mind, this is like off the top of my head.
A rewrite for her?
Yeah. I swear to God, did you make a fucking pun? I feel like you made a pun because I saw you smirk there.
I didn't. I didn't intentionally, and then when you said that, I thought, oh wait, rewrite the.
Fuck.
But I'm saying, you did it to yourself that time because I was just thinking rewrite as in the word rewrite. You are the one who got ahead of yourself there.
I saw you fucking smirk. Okay.
Yeah, but that's because I was smirking about you doing rewrites because you can't stop yourself from doing rewrites.
Yeah. Fucking hate puns.
Yeah, you kind of shot yourself in the foot on that one, my friend. You forced me to think of a pun.
I feel so bad. Oh, God, I feel awful.
Is it from the cold or the pun?
Both, mostly from the cold though. Like I'm getting worse. I think.
Okay. I mean, I've been sick plenty of times. I'd offer something, but I don't know if it would work. Like how I usually deal with being sick is like bundle up and like have a heater on and sweat it out. It's one of them. Then take like really hot showers, like breathe that in. Also tried honey as well.
All right.
Spoonful.
I was just gonna drug myself with NyQuil and go to sleep, but I could try that.
I mean, if you want to go to bed, man.
We're almost done, so I guess I'll just write this out.
But yeah, the Riri Williams rewrite was, well, one thing, have her set in yeah, it's gonna sound fucking bad. Have her come from Africa. What I mean is like a third world country within Africa, but she is still a prodigal mind, like a genius, right?
Hmm.
Um, that's actually all I had because my mind got distracted when we were talking more about the movie.
See, I don't think you have to go that far. I'm fine with her being like from an inner city or something, but this is the ultimate thing with Riri. If you want to tell person comes from, oppressed background story, you actually have to make her oppressed. This is going to sound awful, but if you want to tell a character who has a chip on their shoulder because of oppression story, you actually have to make her oppressed. And the way I'd go about it is if anyone has ever seen the movie Finding Forrester, there's a character in that named Jamal Wallace who is a very, very strong literary mind, but he comes from an inner city background and he's very poor. And the way he gains acceptance is through um, doing basketball. So he kind of has to keep his writing talent secret in order to kind of gain acceptance from his peers. And then he gets an opportunity to go to a more upper class school um, because they take like standardized tests and he uh, lands in like the 99th percentile or something.
And he's bullied and shit.
Huh?
Is he bullied or whatever?
No.
Okay.
They it's actually a really good movie. It was, I believe, I believe it was Sean Connery's like last or no, second to last movie because his last one was League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. But yeah, his like second to last movie because long story short, he finds out that one of the like old hermits in his neighborhood is actually a famous writer, and he essentially ends up in a situation where he offers to do all sorts of chores and favors for this old guy if he helps him with his writing career. And of course, slowly they develop a friendship. And then at the end of the movie, he dies because, of course, he does. And then Jamal sort of um, takes up his mantle as a great writer after he dies and everything. But my point is that if you made Riri have a backstory similar to that, where she was from the inner city and she didn't have opportunities to actualize her potential, and then you had her have that kind of chip on her shoulder, it would at the very least make more sense. Um, Obviously you'd still have to sand off some of the edges, like don't make her actually steal the stuff to make the Ironheart armor because that was stupid, and don't make her force her like the biggest problem with Riri is they wanted to tell a oppression story, but they also wanted to have a perfect Mary Sue who actually wasn't oppressed, and so you wind up with the absurdity of I'm begging my teacher to oppress me so I have something to oppose, which
Uh,
is just the worst thing ever.
So there's an interesting parallel between Riri Williams and a character named Echo from League of Legends, right? So Echo is a black boy, like a black kid.
Sorry, I remember Arcane. God, that is a good fucking show.
It is a good fucking show. But anyway, so basically, and I'm going to spoil some things for Brainstormer. So basically, Echo is basically a child genius, right?
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
He comes up with a way to like, I mean, it's a magical world in general, so like expect that to be a thing. But he
Yeah,
comes up with a way of actually like
Reversing time.
doing like soft manipulations of time. Like he can actually like leap ahead in time and leave
yeah, he's a
echoes of
chronomancer.
himself, right?
Yeah,
So the thing about Echo and Riri is that like while they're both child geniuses, Echo is actually really likable and Riri's personality is just awful.
yeah. Again,
That's
it's this constant chip. She has a chip on both shoulders for reasons of fuck all. The writers say so, basically.
Because they wanted to show.
Sorry.
I think they just don't understand how to represent a character who undergoes a how to undergo her struggle properly. That's what I
Because they don't actually understand how people actually. The problem with characters like Riri is you either have to write them very, very well or not at all. Because in order to write a story with that kind of tragic element of, being disadvantaged or coming from the lower rungs of society, you have to understand human nature well enough to know how people think in those terms and not in the I read, a critical theory textbook and now I understand the abstract behind the scenes aspect of it in the actually observe people, actually talk to people, actually try to understand people aspect of it. That that yeah, that's one of the reasons why ideology or no freaking ideology, I don't think modern day writers can, for the most part, do good writing, is because in order to understand how in order to write good characters, good well-rounded characters that are three-dimensional and basically actually exist, all but for the empirical thing, um, you have to understand how people work. And in order to understand how people work and how circumstances work, such that you can create a tragic character, you have to have experienced tragedy to some
tragedy.
degree. You
Yeah,
have to have lived in the real world, and therefore you basically have to go up in the worst circumstances you can, and then also have the aptitude of being a people watcher. That's the template for a really good writer. Whereas
I
whereas modern day writers don't come from the dregs or the working class, the actual working class anymore. They come
they come
from
from the upper crust of society,
yeah,
basically.
the bourgeois hipsters whose only understanding of the working class is in the aforementioned abstract critical theory woo woo thing. And that's why Golden and Silver Age comics was so well written, because a lot of the people who wrote comics back in the day, your Jack Kirby's, um your Stan Lee's, etc., had seen some shit. They had taken more than their fair share of knocks in life. And so they were able to understand the kind of people watching, here's how you create a person from scratch impulse. Whereas modern day writers don't know jack shit about people other than
Because a
in the
lot,
like
like
abstract.
exactly, because a lot of modern day writers, like you said, they're basically people from like the upper class. They're from people who really haven't seen shit. They mostly live soft lives, and if you've lived a soft life and you've lived a really insulated life, where most of your knowledge of other people comes from like critical theory books, then yeah, you're probably not going to know terribly much about how other people live.
Am I a
Yeah.
modern day writer?
You're a modern day.
I think you're a perfect counterpoint for the opposite of what I'm talking about here. Because you have had the aforementioned hard knocks more than your fair share, so you do have a very people watching sort of mind.
And
So
you haven't learned from and you haven't learned from critical race theory books.
Oh no, I've learned things about people from people.
yeah. And now don't get us wrong here. It is possible for someone who comes from a more bourgeois background to understand people
Yes.
if they have the kind of iconoclastic or like rugged individualist mindset where they actually do desire to learn about the real world or
All
through
right.
other people.
Okay. Wait, Dalton. I'm sorry to interrupt your train of thought, but I have something that reminded me of something I want to tell you that will make
Okay.
you cringe. Okay. So there's a picture that's going around, right? And it's called The Four Horsemen of Logic. One of them has the amazing atheist, and his title is The Iconoclast.
Cringe.
I'm sorry.
Like back in like 2012 to 2016, he could have actually pulled that off. Ever since he and his crew broke it off with like the Drunken Peasants crew and like Sargon's crew.
Yeah.
He's he's gone like he essentially pulled the same maneuver as Shuan Head, where she used to be reasonable and then she started hanging out with the
Vouch.
wrong the wrong crowd, and
Yeah,
now she's just gone completely fucking insane. The same thing happened with Amazing Atheist.
pretty
But
much.
point being, brain. What was I saying? Oh, about it is possible for someone with a more bougie life to understand people if they actually put in the effort to actually understand people and not just assume. Because this is the thing, it's not even an intelligence thing. It's partially a personality type thing and partially a sort of philosophical worldview thing. Because the biggest problem with the insular kind of aristocrats, the ones that don't bother to understand people, is they assume they already do, and they assume that the only thing in the world that matters is authority. Those kind of people are too far gone. There's nothing they will ever do that will allow them to understand people. However, there are people like, as much as I have disagreements with him, Jordan Peterson, who never, despite having, come from a very bougie background and come from a very bougie perspective, is willing to take people at their word and take experience and the world as it is and not assume he already knows everything. For the most part, again, there are things I disagree with him on, and partially I think those disagreements come from him being a little bit insular. But honestly, that's mostly due to the fact that he's been in academia for 50
I
years. So
feel so bad for him. Like when he went into a coma, you had people on Twitter celebrating and like being like,
yeah, the condescending. Well, I guess Mr. Personal Responsibility isn't all that good at it himself, or there.
it was
Like,
so awful. Like they were just like celebrating that he might die, and I'm like, oh, this is
well, it wasn't even that. I saw more people dancing on his ideology's grave. Like they took the fact that he needed help as a refutation of his like personal responsibility rhetoric. Because they had a very childish understanding of personal responsibility as though it requires everyone to be an island. Um,
yeah.
the other thing I've noticed for him that makes me feel really bad for Jordan Peterson is now every time he has an emotional breakdown because he's been moved by something he's experienced or done,
Yeah.
um, there's a certain percentage of like PUAs and like male life coaches that will call him a beta because he shows emotions, and I'm just like, bitch, you are part of the problem. This fucking traditionalistic approach to masculinity, where like men are actually supposed to be the strong men who don't ever show emotions. It's like when you it'd be like you know bitching at a war veteran for having PTSD when you've seen some shit you often find that you're the like very strong and I must be stoic at all times really fades because when you've seen some shit, sometimes you don't have the option of crying or not. It's
Pretty much, yeah. It just happens.
the
Uh,
same thing with people who try to discredit Kyle Rittenhouse when he was crying on the stand over having to kill people. And I'm like, you do realize that if he hadn't cried, you'd be calling him a emotionalist sociopath. And now that he is crying, you're calling him a weak drama queen. And it's like, what the fuck is wrong with you people?
there's no winning with these kind of people. Actually, I didn't want to bring this up earlier because you just talk briefly before we move on. Arcane, like again, how good that show is. Um, I know, Dawn, you haven't seen it. You really should.
Yeah, I still haven't seen it. I need to catch up. The thing of it was my mom and her boyfriend had a fight, so mom changed all the like Netflix and streaming passwords and stuff, and I just haven't had the chutzpah to ask her what the Netflix password was. So I haven't caught up on Netflix for a while. Like I haven't seen Cabinet of Curiosities yet. I haven't seen what was the other one that a lot of people were losing their shit over.
What is Cabinet
I have
of Curiosities?
It's a Game
yeah,
of the War thing.
it's basically Guillermo del Toro does Twilight Zone anthology.
Oh,
Is
is it like those old creep show type of movies shows?
it's basically his version of Night Gallery.
Ooh, that sounds amazing.
Right. God, I need to like go and like I remember watching Twilight Zone reruns on Sci-Fi Channel when they still did that.
So did I.
Yeah, my favorite one, like I have like three favorites Twilight Zone episodes, which is the one with the death with the masks. You know, what I'm talking about.
Oh, with the death match.
I believe that episode was just called The Mask, the one where the millionaire has his whole family come in, and it's during Mardi Gras, so he has them wear like voodoo masks that he got from an old Cajun, and then it turns them into it basically makes it impossible for them to hide their true selves because their faces now map who they are inside.
Yeah,
That one.
yeah. Yes, I think that's my favorite one. Then my second favorite one is the again we're talking classic Twilight Zone, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
the 1959 through 1964 one.
Right. The second one is the Beauty is the Eye of the Beholder episode.
Ah.
I gotta go outside and get the mail. I'll be right back. You guys
Okay.
keep talking.
What was the third
Okay.
one? Third one, but God, it's been so long since I've seen the original Twilight Zone episodes.
There are. I think they're actually on most streaming services. I think I know they're on Hulu. I know they're on Netflix. At least the original. I don't think the '80s series is on anywhere, and I don't think the early 2000s one is on anywhere.
I did recently watch the episode where Death quits his job from that one.
One Night at Mercy. Yeah, that's my favorite. The one where Jason Alexander was playing Death.
Yeah, I liked that one a lot. And God, I'm trying to think of the third original series one that I can't fucking remember.
Describe it and let me see if I can.
No, that's the thing. I can't remember anything about it.
My favorite episode of the original Twilight Zone for personal reasons, which is also the very first Twilight Zone episode I ever watched, is called The Mind and the Matter, where a person who hates people develops the ability to warp reality based on concentration. So he decides to get rid of all the people, and then he like slowly goes mad with boredom because he realized that as annoying as people are, he still needs them around, if for no other reason than to bounce off of. And then he tries to make a world full of people that are exactly like him, but he finds also that he hates himself. So too much of him is also annoying to him. So he just puts it back the way it was at the end.
I think I might have it, but it's not for the reasons I like the first two, which is the story itself. This one is more so on the extensive resonance that it's had with pop culture and the parody of it. It's the one where the guy survives nuclear war, is able to read all the books he wants, but breaks his glasses.
Time Enough at Last is the one you're thinking of there.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a pretty classic one. I actually find that as much as I love the first Twilight Zone, basically all the Twilight Zones except for Jordan Peele's have their good moments. Like I really love the 80s episode The Last Defender of Camelot, which is one where Lancelot survives to the modern day because of the spell that Merlin cast on him, and then he winds up waking up Merlin, but Merlin finds the modern world horrible, and so he decides to try and genocide it. And so Lancelot, this kid Tom that he finds on the streets of London, and Morgan Le Fay end up having to kill Merlin because Merlin is so put off by the modern world that he wants to get rid of it.
Right, but I'm also realizing I need to watch like various other like anthology series that I never got to because like they were before my time.
I think you'll really like the Tales from the Dark Side. It's basically the edgy the older brother of the Twilight Zone.
I also
Came out
want to see.
came out in the 80s.
I also want to see like Tales of the Crypt Keeper.
Crypt. Tales from the Crypt.
There was a cartoon that was called Tales from the Crypt Keeper. So
Yeah, that was a spinoff.
yeah, so that might be the one I was thinking about because I remember seeing that intro on YouTube a few times. So
Yeah.
okay. So but I did mean Tales from the Crypt.
Yeah. Funnily enough, though, Tales from the Crypt is based on a comic, and several of the episodes are straight up adaptations of the comics.
Right. Also, apparently, something from Nickelodeon that they had, which was
Are You Afraid of the Dark?
yeah, that old one. And there was one coming out when I was growing up. I can't remember it. It was based on a book series that I had actually read, an anthology book series that I had read. It was like a modern Goosebumps, but I can't remember. Hold on, I'm gonna.
Haunting Hour?
No. That was on like the Hub, which I guess would be now Discovery Kids.
Actually, funnily enough, it used to be Discovery Kids, and they changed it to the Hub, and then I guess they changed it back.
Yeah, it's weird. Alright,
I didn't realize they changed it back. This is the first I'm hearing of it. Good for them. Yeah, I can't think of any anthologies that Nickelodeon did other than Are You Afraid of the Dark?
oh, that's interesting.
Hmm.
And apparently there was a revival of Are You Afraid of the Dark in 2019.
Oh. That should make me happy, but it's going to make me angry when I end up seeing it, I have a feeling. Because I can guarantee you it's not going to be anywhere near as good as the old show. And that's sad.
Was it a revival?
Hmm?
Sorry, I'm just.
The only show that I can think of that was kind of in the same vein was House of Anubis. That was on Nickelodeon, but that wasn't an anthology. It was a good show though, but it still wasn't an anthology show. Oh, why the fuck am I yelling?
Dead Time Stories. That's what I was thinking about.
Okay, I never watched that.
Yeah, it was 2012, 2014. So
I would have been in college. No wonder I didn't see it. Because my senior year was in 2013.
right. Although no, I don't think it was. I think it was like a T. Yeah, I think they did like yearly specials for it. Actually,
Okay, that would explain why I didn't see it. Because I surely would have known if they had done a series like that. Because I know Disney eventually did a show based on the movie Mostly Ghostly that they had, and of course everyone I'm sure remembers My Babysitter's a Vampire, the series. That was Disney too.
she's a girl. It's sore. I remember that fucking song because it played so much on my TV.
Yeah. I always remember that show because it had that one episode where the jock like inextricably becomes friends with the two main characters,
And he's a werewolf, yeah.
yes, and he was cute.
No wonder. You remember that one?
Yes, I realize that that's probably very shallow, but I'm not that complicated, and everyone who knows me knows. It's just I'm I'm weird enough that most people don't bother to get to know me, but once you get to know me, I'm very, very simple to figure out.
Okay, so I guess we'll move on to the next thing.
Yeah, Doom Patrol.
Yeah, Doom Patrol Season 4 official trailer.
I suspect Corrupt must have passed out. Actually, I bet he got off. I bet he got off air, accidentally went and lied down, and now he's asleep.
He seems going to
Anyway.
get mail, so.
Well, I can't imagine his mailbox is that far away because I happen to know he lives in Atlanta.
Okay.
Or is it? He lives in a city in Georgia, so his mailbox can't be that far away.
Right. Anyway.
Banana.
No.
We're doomed.
Something very big and very dangerous is headed our way. Immortus is real, and it's coming. We are wondering.
I forgot that the actor who played Crowley or Kenton Everett Delaware III was in this.
Yeah, he plays Wallaby Kipley, who, and again, I've read the book where this character was introduced. Actually played a very minor role, to my knowledge.
I'm sure the creators behind the show were like, we got the guy who played Crowley and Kenton Everett Delaware in Doctor Who, so we got the guy who played Crowley in Supernatural and Kenton Everett Delaware III in Doctor Who, so write him a larger role, damn it.
All right. Mark Shepard. That was his name.
There we go.
Yeah, I don't really have anything because there really isn't much in the 20 seconds, so.
Yep, banana.
Into the literal end of days as we speak.
I think he's serious.
The Immortus Project. It's the pursuit of immortality.
Have you ever wondered why you've looked exactly the same for decades?
That is Michelle Gomez, aka Misty, aka Lilith in Chilling Mistress Sabrina.
Yeah, she's playing Madame Rouge from the Brotherhood of Evil.
And just like that, I have 2 slots full of my Doctor Who bingo cards.
She was in season 3, you know.
Alright, I'm back.
Hey, we're watching the trailer for Doom Patrol Season 4.
Alright.
What are your opinions on the Doom Patrol series?
Say that again?
What are your opinions on the Doom Patrol series? If you've seen it all.
It's weird, but I like it, I guess.
It's so good. I think I've talked about this before, but I watched the pilot episode for it, and like it made me emotional. Like, and that rarely happens with me, and that's how I judge on whether or not something is good. For the record, I watched this back to back with the Titans pilot as well.
Ew, Titans.
Dude,
compared to Titans, this is the freaking second coming of Shakespeare.
Yeah, this should have been the flagship for DC Universe app.
In a sane and just world, it would have been.
Right. But
we don't live in a sane or just world anymore.
It's weird. That show is like, it's not weird like how this is weird in a good way. That show is weird on the fact that it's just so fucking like it doesn't know what to do with itself.
It makes every wrong choice it knows how to like.
I feel like
it unironically makes every wrong choice it's possible to make.
I feel like Titans tries to go for the YA market, That's why it is the way that it is.
Dude, like,
You see
honestly, I'm sorry.
No, you just see that with like the CW shows are kind of like that too. There's like a particular demographic they're trying to
Actually,
pursue.
actually, to kind of sidebar real quick before I get into the point I was going to say, but
What's that?
um, I said this before, but I am actually like when I saw the trailer for CW's Gotham Knights, which again is absolutely terrible.
Yeah.
I was inspired to make a pre-write, which I already have season 1 in the Discord posted. I'm basically creating my own CW DC universe.
That sounds more interesting than what's happening now.
Dude, I have 4 shows, 4 major crossovers, well, 4 major events that are crossovers,
Oh my god.
and multiple seasons planned for each show, which I actually have listed here on a document I made.
Oh Jesus.
Oh my
Yeah.
god, dude,
That did not feel well.
I hate so much how creative I can be.
Well, I mean, you're putting that to good
Because you
use.
can't help but make things, and then you can't help but tell me, and then I connect like 3 things that you didn't see connections to previously, and then boom, we have a whole new universe.
Yeah,
This is how it works.
I legitimately changed it. Like I took inspiration for Gotham Knights, like the Batman cartoon, the Batman movie that came out. The 2003 Batman cartoon. Like I have Ellen Yin, the detective from that show,
Yeah.
in this show as the commissioner, because in the actual cartoon it is shown that she becomes commissioner in the future.
Yeah.
And I have the actress who played Melinda May in Agent, like for casting, because she voiced that character in the cartoon. So that makes sense. But yeah, it's a mix of Batman and Beyond as well, like because it takes place in like 2045 in that universe. What the hell? Corrupt?
What happened?
I don't know. I thought he was saying something, just cut out.
Yeah, I thought he was too.
Oh, sorry about that.
Were you saying something before?
No, I was just. I'm just feeling like shit. I just feel really shit.
All right, but
You should go to bed, Corrupt.
No, I'm good. I should be okay.
okay.
I should be okay.
But yeah, it legitimately just started with like 8 seasons of Gotham Knights for my rewrite version. Not that I say
You have
that
a whole
now.
ass series.
Huh?
Yeah.
You have a whole series.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I already have the 5 seasons kind of worked out already.
You always do this to yourself.
Oh wait, I always do this. I always fucking
And
do.
I usually help you do it to yourself. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for enabling you.
But yeah, although I am kind of proud with this, just because like it's more coherent, somewhat. Just because like it's being handled by one guy, obviously not by multiple people. Like,
Well, one guy who actually knows what he's doing versus a whole team of people who have no idea.
Like I said before, and I'll say it again. I think one of the big differences when it comes to the CW is that you have a group of people who would rather write like would rather write shit like Downton Abbey than what we have
So they just end up
like
turning. So
superhero
they just
show.
end up turning superhero shows into Downton Abbey because they'd rather write. Yeah. In any case, guys, unless you're actually writing a YA novel, you shouldn't be taking cues from YA novels.
Well said.
What'd you say, Corrupt?
No, I said well said.
Yeah. Anyway, Banana.
Yeah.
get you longevity. That's it. It's all over for you lot. We have to stop this before it's too late.
What do you say? Do you want to go and save the world? We are heroes, are we not?
Okay, so I mentioned this gripe to Dalton earlier, but I do like Doom Patrol, like the series and stuff. It's really cool. I dig it.
Yeah.
There's always been an issue with me after like season 1 and 2 was like after season 2, which was they aren't really technically the Doom Patrol. Like they're not,
because they don't do hero work.
and like don't get me wrong, I totally get like the whole like the concepts they're dealing with and stuff, and like growing the characters and all, and I'm fine with that. I think it's good, and like they do it really well. You know, it's some really great character work that I haven't really seen in a few years, to be honest, compared to other stuff.
Again, in a sane world, this would be the standard. In the world we find ourselves, this is the many times over exception to the rule, which
Right.
is sad.
This
Yeah.
does seem kind of like they're going in that direction now, because I actually did start reading. Well, I've had the
Grant Morrison one.
Yeah, Grant Morrison one, Doom Patrol comic, volume. I'm actually looking at it right now as I was talking. And as weird and as in-depth they go with the characters, again, they do still superheroics, just really weird, out there superheroics that really, it's like that kind of thing, like, no one's really, if anyone remembers that Justice League Unlimited episode with Booster Gold, where he basically saves the world, no one will know that he did that.
I remember a lot of Justice League Unlimited. I don't remember that one.
I think it was like first season.
Maybe it's just because I have never been that big a Booster Gold fan, at least not until Raven the Bold, but I didn't really feel the need to seek any of his episodes out. Like I remember the question one. I remember the bodies because they had Michael Rosenbaum doing the voice of the Flash. I don't remember the Booster Gold one. What happened in that one?
There was a guy who accidentally attached an artificial black hole to himself, and he was sucking up everything amidst a Justice League battle with a evil wizard. Booster Gold had to have.
Was it Morrow that or Mordo that they were fighting?
I have no fucking clue, man.
Because it seems like every time the Justice League Unlimited writers needed a giant fight to happen in the background for other things to happen in front of, they always used the DC version of Mordo, and it always used to bother me because, like, for all the characters they gave full on backstories to, they just never used. They never used Mordo for anything other than here is a giant magical threat to fight while other more interesting things are going on.
Okay.
Though to be fair, I have the same problem with Batman the Brave and the Bold because they introduced Wotan in one of the cold open segments with Dr. Fate, and Wotan is like Fate's biggest human enemy, and they never used him in the actual Dr. Fate centric episode. That being said, we did get Equinox, who was voiced by the original Dr. Fate, Oded Freyer, so I'm not complaining a lot, but still, it bothers me that they had the foresight to include Wotan, but they never actually used him for anything. Anyway, moving on.
To be fair, I only know of Wotan from the DC Comics Earth 2. DC Comics New 52 Earth 2 run.
They also never did. Speaking of Doctor Fate characters, they never used Typhon really. I was really happy when they mentioned him in Brave and the Bold, but they never used. They basically gave all of Typhon's powers and backstory to Clarion for some reason, and that always bothered me.
Anyway, shall we?
Yep, banana.
I don't know.
Hammock.
No.
Dalton really hates that idea.
Stop degenerating the innocent pause word. Anyway, banana.
Fine.
This is code red.
To stop this, we have to confront our past. We're gonna have to go back to where this all began.
You know, it's like the thing I love about the show is that it's both. The weirdest thing is, like, if it was handled by anyone else, you can make an argument that it's like super artsy fartsy with how it's directed and stuff.
Yeah.
But they actually just do it sincerely here.
Yeah. Also, the fact that they just get the most weirdest, most obscure characters from the canon and just incorporate them here, because I think we just saw a version of Codpiece.
You are probably right there, actually.
Oh, hold on, I can.
Sorry, I'm not very talkative. I'm just kind of dying over here.
Go to bed, Corrupt. Go to bed.
Hey, this might help you. Say hello to a DC supervillain, Codpiece.
Codpiece?
Yeah, I'm not joking, man. That is a legit character.
You are going to give him a new obsession with this character, I have a feeling.
Codpiece? What about fucking, have you ever seen Dominatrix? I'm sorry. What is it? It's not Dominatrix, it's shit, what's her name? Let me see. It's like, hold on. It's like a super major. Screw it. I'll look up her name later. But yeah, that's Codpiece.
The interpretation for Doom Patrol, yeah.
What does he do? Exactly.
It's a laser. It's like a laser gun attached to his dick.
That's amazing.
I knew as soon as Brainstormer brought it back that we'd be giving Corrupt a new thing to obsess over.
Oh my god, I love this character. And I thought Snowflame was my obsession. No, I love this guy.
Oh god, Snowflame. Oh, Snowflame. I love Snowflame.
Yeah.
Best cocaine-powered character ever. And
Also,
and that is now a category specifically for Snowflame.
like this, along with like Arcade. Not Arcane, not Arcade. Are like shows I would like to point to for like SJWs to take note of and how to write good like shows.
Umbrella Academy too. While we're directing them towards streaming shows, because I think Umbrella Academy is really good as well.
Yeah.
And speaking of things that the SJWs need to take part or need to take notes from, they introduced one of the main characters becoming trans in Umbrella Academy season 4. Was not cringe at all. They were like, this is a thing now. It fits this character's backstory, and everyone accepts it, and we're moving on. Like and the best part for me was they didn't feel the need to soften Allison and Victor's what's the phrase? Dynamic in order to make Victor safe. Like there are scenes where Allison literally like mind fucks Victor because she's angry with him, and it's like exactly as severe as it would be if she were still Vanya. So
Right.
good for you, Umbrella Academy. You actually managed to do a trans character as a main character without making it oppressor and oppressed or cringe.
Well, also bringing up what's the word? Buzzword characters. Larry Trainer, the Negative Man, from the Doom Patrol series. Like his arc of accepting himself, because he's a man like from the '60s, or well, even though he was in his prime in the '60s.
So he would have been like born during the 40s.
I think so. Or
'Cause
late.
if he was in his 20s in the 60s,
Well, no,
then
he
he
had
would have been.
a family, and they were all, and like his kids were like maybe 10 or so. So
Okay, so he was like 30 in the 60s, so he would have been like born in 1930ish or thereabouts. Like late 1920s, early 1930s then.
yeah. And so, he was a closeted gay dude who was also in the military. And even after his, it's just like, it's a really great art. And I don't think I could really describe it to give it justice.
But long story short, they actually do what would otherwise be social justice stories without beating you about the head and face with the critical theory textbook.
It's told from a very human perspective.
Because they're actually characters and not fucking ideological mouthpieces.
Yeah.
In any case, Banana.
Also, it's played by the character is played by Matt Bomer. He's a really cool dude. Fun fact: he's actually tried to play Superman many times in live action. Never got the chance.
I don't think he'd be very good for that role, though. To be fair, it's kind of like when Nicolas Cage says he wants to play Superman. I'm like, I respect that you want to do that, but you shouldn't play that character.
I would disagree because he has voiced the character before in animation. So
I just don't think he has the presence to play him. Is the thing. At least not when we still have whoever the fuck plays him in Superman and Lois, whose name I can't remember.
Tyler something.
Hoechlin, I think.
Oh,
Hoechlin, something like that.
It's
Yeah, as long as Henry Cavill and Tyler Hoechlin are playing Superman, or if we could get Brandon Routh ever back again, like I just because unfortunately part of playing Superman is the physical presence thereof, and I don't think guy who plays Negative Man could have that kind of physical presence.
Matt Bomer or Bomer.
Thank you.
Bomer.
Yeah.
In
any case, yeah, I don't think he has the physical presence to play the character. In any case, Banana.
Drop.
I think he finally went to bed.
I just popped in. Corrupt, if you're talking, I don't think we can hear you.
Yeah, your mic is not working if you're speaking, my dude. Do, 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 do. Yeah, I think Corrupt is silent for some reason. Anyway, Banana.
Yeah.
What the?
Holy shit, we're doomed.
At least you got to have an orgasm before you die.
There's also another thing, like the comedy is always amazing.
I love you, Doom Patrol. Again, this should have been the flagship for DC. It was not because people are stupid. But Banana.
Yeah, Corrupt. I cannot hear you.
Hello?
Oh,
Okay, now you're coming through.
You can hear me?
yeah.
Yeah.
So the problem is that this laptop is really old. So it has numerous problems just functioning.
Ah,
I get that.
okay. Well, what did we miss from you there, my friend?
Oh no, then I was just
You went quiet again. His laptop committed mutiny again. Banana.
Yeah. Okay.
Die. Thank you.
Yeah, looks good.
Yep. And I suppose that is where we should call it for this evening, because Corrupt has vamoosed and we've been going for like 3 hours.
Yeah. And I feel like kind of a jackass for.
I imagine eventually he's just gonna give up and go to bed.
Okay, fair enough. So, I guess with that, folks, I want to say goodbye, adios, aloha, avizai, sayonara, peace, cheers, and
Shalom and fuck off.